The scar on my hand catches the evening light sometimes. Most days I don't notice it anymore. It's just another mark from a life spent setting bones and stitching wounds. But my daughter Clara, she notices things, always has. She's 19 now, sharp-eyed and curious in that way young people are when they're trying to understand what shaped the world before they arrived. We were sitting on the porch of my house in Tucson. The sun was dropping behind the mountains, painting the desert in shades of copper and rust. I had my coffee. She had her questions. "Papa," she said, pointing at my right hand, "that scar, how did you get it?" I looked down at the white line across my wrist, thin as a thread, deep as a canyon when you know the story behind it. "That scar came from a woman who didn't know whether to trust me," I told her. Clara leaned forward. She has her mother's eyes, sharp, patient, the kind that don't let you get away with half-truths. "What woman?" I took a breath. The air smelled like creosote and dust the way it always does before the desert settles into night. Somewhere down the street a dog barked. A wagon rattled past. Normal sounds. Safe sounds. 20 years ago, nothing felt safe. "Her name was Eliza," I said, "and the summer I met her I learned something I should have known years before." "What's that?" "That some wounds don't heal. They just teach you how to carry weight." Clara set her cup down. She knew that tone. It meant a story was coming, the kind you don't interrupt. I settled back in my chair and let my mind drift to a time when Tombstone was still a boomtown, when silver flowed and men thought they could buy anything, when the desert heat sat so heavy in July that mornings felt tired before they even began. "It started with a knock on my door," I said. "Middle of the night, summer of 1875. Clara pulled her shawl tighter even though the evening was warm. "Tell me," she said. So I did. I was 52 that summer, old enough to know better, young enough to still believe I could make a difference. My office sat on Allen Street, squeezed between a mercantile and a saloon that never seemed to close. 2 rooms, one for examinations, one for surgery when things got bad. And they got bad often in a mining town where men dug silver out of the earth and drank their wages before the dust settled. The night it all began I was working late. Lamplight flickered across my ledger, numbers that didn't add up no matter how many times I checked them. Mrs. Patterson owed for her baby's delivery. The Henderson boy's broken arm. Old Tom's laudanum for the pain that wouldn't quit. I didn't expect them to pay. Most didn't. But I kept the books anyway. Seemed like the thing a proper doctor should do. Outside Tombstone breathed its usual rhythm. Piano music drifted from the Crystal Palace. Boots on wooden sidewalks. The occasional shout. A gunshot somewhere distant enough not to matter. This was a town built on hope and greed in equal measure. It rarely slept. I'd been in Tombstone for 9 years by then. Came after the war. After too many field hospitals and too many boys who called for their mothers while I sawed through bone. The frontier felt like a place where a man could start over, be useful without the weight of all that dying on his shoulders. I was wrong about that. You carry your dead with you no matter how far west you ride. But I tried. I set bones. I delivered babies. I sat with the dying when they didn't want to die alone. It was honest work. Hard work. The kind that lets you sleep at night. Most nights. The knock came at 11:30. 3 sharp raps. Urgent but controlled. Not the pounding of a drunk. Not the frantic hammering of a man with a gunshot friend bleeding out in an alley. This was different. Deliberate. I set down my pen and walked to the door. When I opened it, Caleb Thorne stood there with a blanket-wrapped bundle in his arms. I hadn't seen Caleb in nearly 6 months. Not since the winter when he'd stopped coming into town for supplies. Not since his wife Sarah died and he'd retreated to his ranch like a wounded animal going to ground. He looked older now. His face was weathered beyond his 48 years. His eyes carried the kind of hollowness that comes from grief that won't quite finish its work. He wore range clothes, dusty, practical, the clothes of a man who'd forgotten there was a world beyond his fence line. "Caleb," I said. He didn't waste time on greetings. "I need you to examine her," he said. His voice was rough, like he hadn't used it much lately. "And I need you not to ask questions. Not yet." The bundle in his arms shifted slightly. I caught a glimpse of dark hair, a pale wrist, a woman. "Bring her in," I said. Caleb carried her through to the examination room. He moved carefully, like he was carrying something fragile and dangerous at the same time. He laid her on the table with a gentleness that surprised me. This was a man who worked cattle and horses. His hands knew rough labor, but they treated this burden like it might break. When he pulled back the white blanket, my breath caught. She was young, early 20s, I guessed. Dark hair matted with dirt and sweat, lips cracked from dehydration, bruises on her cheeks, the soft kind, the kind that come from an open hand. But it was her wrists that stopped me cold. Rope burns, raw and recent, the kind you get when you've been tied for hours, maybe days. The kind you get when you pull against restraints until your skin tears and you pull anyway because the alternative is worse. Her eyes were closed, but her breathing was shallow and fast, the breathing of someone who's learned that sleep is dangerous. "What happened?" I asked. Caleb's jaw worked. He looked at the floor, at the wall, anywhere but at her. "I found her at my ranch," he said. "This morning. Someone left her. Left her. Like cargo." I moved to the basin and washed my hands. The water was cold. I focused on the ritual of it. Soap, scrub, rinse. The things you do when your mind is racing and your hands need something to trust. "I'm going to examine her," I said. "You can stay or go. But if you stay, you stand back." Caleb nodded and moved to the corner. He crossed his arms, watched. I approached the table slowly. The woman's eyes were still closed, but I could see the tension in her body, every muscle coiled, ready to fight or flee or both. "Miss," I said softly, "my name is Dr. Hayes. I'm going to check your injuries. I won't hurt you, but I need to touch your wrist to see how bad the rope burns are." Her eyes snapped open. They were brown, dark as coffee, and filled with the kind of fear I'd seen before. In the war, in prisoners, in people who'd been broken down to nothing and then forced to keep breathing anyway. She looked at me, then at Caleb, then back at me. "Are you going to send me back?" Her voice was barely a whisper, hoarse, like she'd screamed herself raw. "Back where?" I asked. "Wherever men like him send girls like me." I glanced at Caleb. He was staring at the floor, hands clenched. "Nobody's sending you anywhere," I said. "But I need to see those wrists." She didn't move, didn't trust, just stared. So I waited, because that's what you do with wounded things. You wait for them to decide whether you're safe. After a long moment, she slowly extended her right arm. The rope burns were worse up close. Deep grooves in the skin, some places where the flesh had torn completely. Infection was already starting, red streaks spreading up toward her elbow. I'd seen rope burns before, from accidents, from men who'd been dragged. But these were different. These had been tied with intent, professional knots. The kind meant to restrain, not kill. The kind that said, "You are not a person. You are cargo." "How long were you tied?" I asked. "I don't know," she whispered. "Days, maybe." I moved to examine her other wrist. Same pattern, same professional cruelty. "Anything else hurt ribs back?" She shook her head, then stopped. "My ankle. I think I twisted it trying to—" She didn't finish. Didn't need to. I checked her ankle, swollen, sprained, not broken. I checked her pupils, dehydration, exhaustion, fear that had burrowed so deep it had become part of her bones, but no other visible injuries, no signs of other violations. Thank God for small mercies. I stepped back and looked at Caleb. She needs clean bandages, water, rest, and she needs to stay somewhere safe while those burns heal. "She's staying with me," Caleb said. The woman's eyes widened. "No." "I didn't mean—" Caleb started. "I'm not going back to any ranch," she said. Her voice was stronger now, anger cutting through the fear. I'm not going back to any man's house. I held up my hands. Nobody's forcing you anywhere, but those wrists need tending, and you need rest. You have anywhere else to go. She looked at me, at Caleb, at the door. Then she sagged. The fight drained out of her like water from a cracked cup. No, she whispered. I pulled up a stool and sat down so I was at eye level with her. Here's what we're going to do, I said. I'm going to clean and bandage those wrists. Then you're going to drink some water. Then we're going to figure out what happened and what comes next. Together. Does that sound acceptable? She studied my face, looking for lies, looking for the trap. Finally, she nodded. I got to work. Cleaning rope burns is delicate business. The flesh is raw. Every touch brings pain. You have to be gentle and thorough at the same time. Remove the dirt and debris without tearing the wounds wider. She didn't cry out. Not once. She just bit her lip and stared at the ceiling. Tough. This one was tough. When I finished bandaging her wrists, I brought her water. She drank it like she'd been wandering the desert for days. Maybe she had. Slow, I warned. Too fast and you'll be sick. She forced herself to slow down. Discipline, even in desperation. I glanced at Caleb. He was still standing in the corner watching with that hollow expression, like he was seeing something that confirmed every dark thing he'd come to believe about the world. Caleb, I said, why don't you tell me exactly how you found her? He took a breath, organized his thoughts. Caleb was never a man who wasted words. This morning, dawn. I was having coffee on the porch. Saw a wagon at my north fence line. What kind of wagon? Freight wagon. One wheel half sunk in the dust. Mule tied to the post. No driver. No tracks except the wagon's own. And she was in it. Under that white blanket. He nodded toward the blanket he'd carried her in. It was folded on the chair now. Plain white cotton. Nothing special, except for the corner. I noticed it then. A small mark, pressed into the fabric like a brand. Simple, deliberate. A circle with 2 lines through it, like a crude dollar sign. Something about that mark tugged at my memory. I'd seen it before. Somewhere. There was a note, Caleb continued, tucked into the rope on the tailgate. What did it say? 2 words. Paid. Delivered. The woman on the table made a sound, half laugh, half sob. You paid for me, she said, looking at Caleb. Her voice was bitter. Dead. Now do it. Caleb's face went hard. I didn't buy you. Then who did? I don't know, but I'm going to find out. She laughed again, that awful broken sound. Good luck. Men like them don't leave trails. I stepped between them. The tension in the room was rising like water in a flood. Hold on, I said. Let's start with something simple. What's your name? She looked at me. For a moment I thought she wouldn't answer. Then quietly, Eliza. Eliza Ferris. Where are you from, Eliza? Kansas. Small town called Millbrook. You wouldn't know it. How did you end up in Arizona? Her face closed, shutters slamming down. Same way most girls end up places they don't want to be. Promises that turned into lies. Men who smiled while they took everything. I didn't push. Some stories need time. Instead, I turned back to Caleb. You said there was a note. You still have it. He reached into his coat and pulled out a folded piece of paper. Cheap stock. The kind you buy at any general store. He handed it to me. I unfolded it carefully. The handwriting was bold, almost aggressive. 2 words like he'd said, paid, delivered. Below that, a smudged seal, the kind shipping clerks use, and along the edge a stain that looked like sweat. Or worse. I studied the seal. It was from Benson's freight yard. I recognized the mark. They handled most of the shipping through southern Arizona. Legitimate business as far as I knew, but this note, this wasn't legitimate. Caleb, I said slowly, did you order anything from Benson's Any Supplies Freight? Last month, nails, flour, lamp oil, some tack for the horses. Did you pay in advance? Always do. They hold shipment otherwise. I looked at the seal again, at Eliza, at Caleb. Someone had used Caleb's payment, added a line item, turned a legitimate supply order into something darker. Human trafficking disguised as freight. My stomach turned. Eliza, I said gently, do you know who brought you here to Arizona? She shook her head. There were 3 of them, maybe 4. I wasn't conscious most of the time. They kept me drugged. Laudanum, I think. Do you remember anything names, faces? One man had a red scarf, talked like he was proud of what he was doing, called me product. Caleb's hands curled into fists. Red scarf, he said. His voice was flat, dangerous. You know him? I asked. Maybe. There's a man works for the freight companies sometimes, handles special deliveries, wears a red scarf, talks too much. You know his name? Porter, Jack Porter. I filed that away. A name, a thread to pull. But there was something else, something nagging at me. That symbol on the blanket. I walked over and picked it up, held it to the light. The mark was faint, but clear, pressed into the fabric hard enough to leave an impression. A circle. 2 lines. Where had I seen that before? And then it hit me. 5 years ago. Sarah Thorne's funeral. I'd been there the day Sarah died. I'd done everything I could, but sometimes everything isn't enough. She'd been sick for weeks, fever, pain in her gut that wouldn't quit. I'd given her what I had, laudanum for the pain, cool compresses for the fever. But what she really needed was morphine, strong enough to let her rest, strong enough to give her body time to fight. I'd ordered it, put in a request through Benson's freight yard. Rush delivery. It never came. By the time I got word that the shipment had been delayed, Sarah was gone. Caleb had buried her on his ranch under a cottonwood tree. The whole town came, or most of it. Sarah had been well liked, kind, the sort of woman who made the frontier feel a little less harsh. I'd stood there in my black coat feeling like a failure, watching Caleb's face turn to stone as the preacher talked about heaven and mercy, and at the grave there'd been flowers. A large arrangement, beautiful, too beautiful for tombstone, with a card attached, no name, just a symbol, a circle with 2 lines through it. I'd thought it was a gesture from one of the mining companies, a condolence. I hadn't asked questions. God help me, I hadn't asked questions. My hands started shaking. Caleb saw it. Doc, you all right? I set the blanket down carefully, tried to keep my voice steady. This symbol, I said. I've seen it before. Where? I met his eyes, saw the grief there, the hollowness that had lived in him for 5 years. At Sarah's funeral. The room went very quiet. Caleb stared at me. His face didn't change, but something in his eyes did. Something cold and old and dangerous. What? His voice was barely above a whisper. The flowers. At her grave. They had a card. Same symbol. Who sent them? There was no name. Caleb crossed the room in 3 steps, picked up the blanket, stared at the mark like it might speak. Someone sent flowers to my wife's funeral, he said slowly. And now someone delivers a woman to my ranch, with the same mark. It could be coincidence, I said. But I didn't believe it, and neither did he. Eliza was watching us. Her eyes flicked between our faces. What does it mean? She asked. I didn't answer. Couldn't. Because the truth was sitting in my chest like a stone. 5 years ago, I'd ordered morphine for Sarah. It never came. She died in pain I could have prevented. And now looking at that symbol, I wondered if the delay had been an accident at all. Caleb turned to me. His face was carved from granite. Doc, he said, I need you to tell me everything you remember about that morphine shipment. My mouth went dry. Caleb, everything. So I did, because some debts you can't run from, Some truths need saying even when they burn. I ordered it 3 weeks before she died, I said. Through Benson's, like always. Morphine sulfate, enough to manage her pain for a month. Caleb's jaw worked. And the clerk said it would take a week, maybe 10 days, standard delivery from Tucson. But it didn't come. No. After 2 weeks I went back, asked what happened. The clerk checked his books, said the shipment had been redirected. Redirected where? I swallowed hard. He didn't say. Just that there'd been a clerical error. The morphine went to a different buyer. By the time they sorted it out, it would be another 2 weeks. 2 weeks Sarah didn't have. No. The silence stretched. Eliza watched us with those dark, careful eyes. Finally, Caleb spoke. His voice was quiet. Too quiet. Did you ever find out who got the morphine instead? No, I was focused on Sarah, on trying to keep her comfortable with what I had. After she died, I stopped. The shame of it was choking me. You didn't ask questions, Caleb finished. No, I didn't. And the flowers, the ones with the symbol. You didn't ask about those either. I thought someone was being kind. Caleb made a sound that might have been a laugh, or might have been something breaking. Kind, he repeated. He set the blanket down, walked to the window, stared out at the dark street. Someone diverted medicine that would have saved my wife, he said. Then sent flowers to her funeral, like they were sorry. We don't know. And now, he continued, not hearing me, someone delivers a woman to my ranch like a sack of grain, with the same mark. He turned, looked at me, at Eliza. That's not coincidence, Doc. That's a message. What kind of message? Eliza asked. Her voice was small. Caleb's eyes were distant, calculating. The kind that says I can take from you, I can hurt you, and you can't do anything about it. The lamp flickered. Outside a horse whinnied. Normal sounds in a normal town, but nothing felt normal anymore. I cleared my throat. Caleb, even if you're right, even if this is connected, we don't know who. Yes, we do. He said it with certainty, cold and final. There's only one man in this territory who moves people like freight, who has connections to the shipping yards, who's rich enough and cruel enough to think of it as business. Who? Eliza whispered. Caleb looked at her, then at me. Silas Crow. The name dropped into the room like a body into a grave. I'd heard of Crow. Everyone had. He owned mining interests, freight contracts, had his fingers in half the legitimate business in southern Arizona, and the other half wasn't legitimate at all. You're sure? I asked. No. But I know how to find out. How? I'm going to Benson's tomorrow. I'm going to look at their ledgers. And I'm going to find out who added Eliza to my supply order. He said it matter-of-factly, like he was planning to check fence posts or count cattle. But I knew what he was really saying. He was going to war. Against a man who could buy sheriffs and judges. Against a system that treated people like cargo. Against the man who might have killed his wife. Caleb, I said carefully, if Crow is involved, if he really did this, you can't just watch me. Eliza pushed herself up on the examination table, winced at the pain in her wrists. If you go after him, she said, he'll kill you. Caleb looked at her, really looked, for the first time since he'd carried her in. Maybe, he said. But I didn't ask for this fight. He brought it to my fence. So you're going to get yourself killed over me, over a stranger? No. I'm going to do what I should have done 5 years ago when that morphine didn't come. I'm going to ask questions, and I'm not going to stop until I get answers. He turned to me. Doc, can she stay here tonight? Caleb, I don't have. Can she? I looked at Eliza, at her bandaged wrists, her hollow eyes, the way she held herself like she might shatter. She couldn't go to the boarding house. Too many questions, too many eyes. And if Crow really was behind this, putting her anywhere public was putting a target on her back. "She can stay in the back room," I said. "I've got a cot. It's not much, but—" "It's fine," Eliza said quietly. "Anything with a lock is fine." Caleb nodded. "I'll be back in the morning, after I talk to the freight yard." "And then what?" I asked. He didn't answer, just picked up his hat, settled it on his head. "Thank you, Doc," he said. "For this, for—" He couldn't finish. The words were too heavy. He looked at Eliza one more time. "I'm sorry this happened to you." "Why?" she asked. "You didn't do it." "No, but someone used my name, and I'm going to make sure they regret it." He left. The door closed behind him with a soft click. Eliza and I sat in the lamplight listening to his boots fade down the wooden sidewalk. "Is he going to get himself killed?" she asked. I thought about Caleb, about the man he'd been before Sarah died, strong, principled, careful, and the man he'd become after, hollow, isolated, a man with nothing left to lose. "Probably," I said. "Then why are you helping him?" I looked at my hands, at the scar that wouldn't exist for another week, the one she'd give me when fear finally broke through her careful control. "Because 5 years ago I should have asked more questions," I said. "I should have pushed harder, demanded answers. Maybe if I had, his wife would still be alive. Maybe." Eliza was quiet for a long moment. Then, "You think this Crow person killed her?" "I don't know. But I think he's the kind of man who doesn't care if people die while he makes money." "There are a lot of men like that." "Yes, but most of them don't operate in my town. Most of them don't use my freight orders to traffic women." I stood, stretched. My back ached. I was getting too old for midnight house calls and moral reckonings. "Come on," I said. "Let's get you settled. You need rest." "I won't sleep." "Try anyway." I led her to the back room. It was small, a cot, a chair, a basin and pitcher, a window with curtains I could close. I lit a small lamp, checked the lock on the door. "If you need anything," I said, "I'll be in the front room. I'm a light sleeper." "Okay." She sat on the cot, looked around like she was memorizing exits. "Dr. Hayes." "Yes." "Why do you think he did it, Caleb? Why bring me here? Why help me?" I thought about that, about the man I'd watched bury his wife, the man who'd disappeared into grief for 5 years, the man who'd shown up tonight with a stranger in his arms and fury in his eyes. "I think," I said slowly, "he's tired of watching bad things happen to people who don't deserve it." "That's a good way to get killed." "Yes, it is." I left her there, closed the door, heard the lock click. Then I went back to my office and stared at that white blanket. The symbol stared back. A circle. 2 lines. A mark I should have questioned 5 years ago. A mark I wouldn't ignore now. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in my office replaying every detail of Sarah Thorne's final weeks. Every conversation with the freight yard. Every excuse I'd accepted without pushing. The clerk had seemed genuinely apologetic. A clerical error, he'd said. These things happen. And I'd believed him, because it was easier than believing someone would deliberately withhold medicine from a dying woman. But now I knew there were people who did exactly that. People who saw suffering as a business opportunity. Who moved human beings like freight and sent flowers to funerals like it was all just another transaction. Around 3 in the morning I heard movement from the back room. I knocked softly. "Eliza? You all right?" Silence. Then, "I can't stop shaking." "That's normal. Your body's trying to process what happened." "It won't stop." I hesitated. Then, "Would it help if I sat with you just in the chair? Outside the door, if you prefer." Another long silence. "Outside the door," she said finally. So I dragged a chair into the hallway and sat with my back against her door. We didn't talk. I just listened to her breathing. The occasional catch that might have been a sob, the long stretches of silence that might have been her trying to convince herself she was safe. Around 4, her breathing evened out. Sleep. Finally. I stayed in the chair anyway. Because that's what you do. When someone's been hurt and they're trying to trust again. You stay. You don't ask for anything. You just prove hour by hour that not everyone is a threat. The sky was starting to lighten when I finally stood. My back screamed in protest. I was too old to sleep in chairs, but I'd do it again if I had to. I went to my desk and pulled out a fresh piece of paper, started making notes. Questions. Who added Eliza to Caleb's freight order? Is the symbol connected to Crow? What happened to Sarah's morphine? How many others has Crow trafficked? Next steps. Talk to Benson's freight clerk. Find Jack Porter. Red scarf. Research. Crow's business dealings. Keep Eliza safe. That last one was going to be the hardest, because if Crow really was behind this, he wouldn't just let her disappear. Women were assets to men like that, and assets had to be recovered or eliminated. I heard boots on the sidewalk outside, heavy, deliberate. My hand went to the pistol I kept in my desk drawer. I'd bought it after a drunk miner tried to rob me 3 years ago. Never thought I'd actually need it. Might be wrong about that now. The footsteps stopped at my door, a knock. Not urgent, not threatening, just patient. I opened the door. Caleb stood there. The sun was barely up. He looked like he hadn't slept either. "Did you find something?" I asked. "Not yet. Freight yard doesn't open till 7, but I wanted to check on her, make sure she made it through the night." "She's asleep, finally." He nodded, looked past me into the office like he could see through walls to where she lay. "I've been thinking," he said, about what comes next, if I find proof, if it is Crow. And I can't prove he killed Sarah, not after 5 years, but I can prove what he did to Eliza, if we handle this right. How? We need a lawyer, or a judge, someone who can make this official, legal. I thought about that, about the judges in Tombstone, about which ones might be in Crow's pocket. "Judge Price," I said. "Horace Price. He's old school, doesn't like show, doesn't take bribes." "You sure as I can be about anyone?" Caleb nodded. "Then I'll talk to him, after the freight yard. And if Price won't help," Caleb's jaw set, "then we do it another way." "What other way?" He didn't answer. Didn't have to. I could see it in his eyes. If the law wouldn't help, he'd handle it himself. And that would get him killed. "Caleb," I said carefully, "whatever you're thinking, whatever you're planning, don't do anything stupid." "Stupid like what?" "Like going after Crow alone. Like thinking you can take on his whole operation with just anger and a rifle. I'm not stupid, Doc. I know. But grief makes smart men do stupid things." He looked at me then, really looked, and I saw something in his face I hadn't seen in 5 years. Purpose. "I made a promise to Sarah," he said quietly, "the night she died. She was lucid for a few minutes, just a few. She held my hand and she said, 'Don't let them turn you into stone, Caleb. Don't let grief make you a man who looks away.'" He swallowed hard. I became that man anyway. For 5 years I looked away, from town, from people, from everything that wasn't my fence line and my grief. "That's understandable. It's not, it's cowardice. And it ends now." He turned to leave, then stopped. "Tell Eliza I'll be back this afternoon. And Doc, yes, thank you, for helping, for being here when I wasn't." Then he was gone, walking toward the freight yard with the sun rising behind him. I watched him go and felt the weight of what was coming settle on my shoulders, because I knew Caleb Thorne, knew him well enough to understand that when a man like that makes a promise to the dead, he keeps it, even if it kills him. I went back inside and checked on Eliza. Still sleeping. Good. I made coffee, strong and bitter, the kind that gets you through bad days. And I waited, because in a few hours Caleb would have answers, and those answers would change everything. They'd either prove that Silas Crow was just a businessman with a questionable reputation, or they'd prove he was something far worse. Either way, the summer of 1875 was about to get a lot more dangerous. I sat at my desk and looked at that white blanket again, at the symbol pressed into the corner. 20 years later, sitting on my porch with Clara, I'd tell her that the scar on my hand came from a woman who didn't know whether to trust me. But the truth was deeper than that. The scar came from the moment I stopped being a man who treated injuries and became a man who fought to prevent them. It came from the night I learned that sometimes medicine isn't enough. Sometimes you have to be willing to stand in front of the darkness and say, "No more." That night, with Eliza sleeping in my back room and Caleb walking toward answers that might get him killed, I didn't know any of that yet. I just knew that something had started, something that couldn't be stopped. The knock at midnight had opened a door, and whatever came through it next would test everything I thought I knew about courage, justice, and the price of looking away. Outside Tombstone woke to another day. The mines would open, the saloons would fill, men would dig silver and spend it and fight over it. Normal life in a frontier town. But for me, for Caleb, for Eliza, normal was over. The war had begun. We just didn't know it yet. The sun came up slow over Tombstone that morning, like it was reluctant to see what the day would bring. I stood at my office window with my third cup of coffee watching the town wake. Miners heading to their shifts, shopkeepers opening shutters, the normal rhythm of a place that lived on silver and hope. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted in the night, like the earth had moved an inch to the left and nobody noticed except me. Eliza was still asleep in the back room. I checked on her twice. Both times she'd been curled into herself, one bandaged wrist tucked under her chin, protecting herself even in sleep. That's what trauma does. It teaches your body that rest is dangerous. I'd seen it in the war. Men who slept with their eyes half open, who woke at the slightest sound reaching for guns that weren't there, who couldn't quite believe the fighting was over even when the guns went silent. Eliza had that same look, like she was waiting for the next blow. Around 7 I heard her moving, the creak of the cot, footsteps, the sound of water being poured. I knocked softly on the door. "Eliza, I'm making breakfast. Nothing fancy. Just eggs and bread. You want some?" Silence. Then, "I'm not hungry." "You need to eat anyway. Those wrists need strength to heal." More silence. Then the lock clicked. She opened the door a crack. Her hair was tangled. Her eyes were red-rimmed from crying or lack of sleep or both. She'd slept in her clothes, the same dusty, torn dress she'd been wearing when Caleb brought her in. "I don't have anything else to wear," she said quietly, reading my thoughts. "I can get you something. There's a dressmaker on Fremont Street, Mrs. Patterson. She's discreet." "I don't have money." "I'm not asking for money." She studied me, still looking for the trap, still waiting for me to show my real intentions. "Why are you helping me?" she asked, not accusatory, just genuinely confused, like kindness was a language she'd forgotten. I thought about how to answer that, how to explain the weight I'd been carrying for 5 years. "Because I didn't help someone when I should have," I said. "And I've been living with that mistake ever since." "Caleb's wife." "Yes." "He loved her a lot." It wasn't a question, but I answered anyway. "More than anything. When she died, part of him died too." Eliza nodded slowly, like she understood that kind of loss. "What happened to her?" she asked. So I told her. Not everything. Not about the morphine yet, just the basics. The fever, the pain, the slow failing of her body while we all watched helpless. "And he's been alone ever since," I finished. 5 years is a long time to be alone." "Yes, it is." She looked past me toward the front office, toward the window where morning light was spilling across the floorboards. "Is he coming back?" she asked. "This afternoon. He went to the freight yard to find out who added your name to his order. And if he finds out, then we have proof. Evidence. Something we can take to a judge. Judges don't care about girls like me. The way she said it. So matter of fact. Like it was just a truth she'd learned to accept. It broke something in my chest. Judge Price might, I said. He's different. Different how? Old-fashioned. Believes in law that means something. Not just law that protects rich men. She laughed. A bitter, tired sound. I've never met a judge like that. Maybe you will today. She didn't look convinced, but she followed me to the front room anyway, sat at my desk while I scrambled eggs on the small stove I kept for late nights. We ate in silence. She picked at her food, forced down a few bites. It was something. Dr. Hayes, she said after a while. Yes. Last night, you sat outside my door. I did. Why? You said you couldn't stop shaking. I thought it might help, to know someone was there. Did you sleep at all? Some. She looked at me then, really looked, and I saw her trying to figure out what kind of man sits outside a stranger's door all night just to make her feel safe. Thank you, she said quietly. You're welcome. We finished eating. I cleared the plates, and then we waited. Because that's all we could do. Wait for Caleb to come back with answers. Wait for the world to decide what happened next. Around 9 there was a knock at the door. Eliza tensed immediately. Her hand went to the knife I'd given her earlier. A small scalpel, not much of a weapon, but better than nothing. It's all right, I said. That's not how Crow's men knock. How do you know? Because they don't knock. They kick. I opened the door. Martha Chen stood there with a basket over her arm. She was 45, give or take, a widow who ran a dry goods store on Allen Street. Practical, sharp-eyed, the kind of woman who saw everything and said half of what she knew. Dr. Hayes, she said, I brought some things. She pushed past me into the office before I could respond. Typical Martha. She saw a need and filled it. No fuss. Then she saw Eliza. Her eyes took in the bandaged wrists, the hollow cheeks, the dress that had seen better days. Martha set her basket down and pulled out clean clothes, a simple dress, undergarments, stockings, a shawl. These should fit, she said to Eliza. My daughter's about your size. She doesn't need them anymore. Eliza stared at the clothes like they might bite. I can't pay you, she said. Did I ask for payment? No, but then take them, unless you want to keep wearing what you've got. Eliza's hands trembled as she reached for the dress. Thank you. Martha nodded. Then she turned to me. Word's spreading, she said quietly, about the girl who showed up at Caleb Thorne's ranch. My stomach tightened. What kind of word? The wrong kind. People are saying Caleb bought himself a wife, that he's lonely enough to pay for company. That's not what happened. I know that. But you know this town. Truth doesn't travel as fast as gossip. I glanced at Eliza. She'd gone pale. They think he bought me, she said. Martha looked at her directly. Some do, some don't. But either way, you being here in Doc's office is going to raise questions. What kind of questions? I asked. The kind that wonder why a respectable doctor is harboring a woman of questionable origin. I felt anger rise in my chest. She's not... I know what she's not, Martha interrupted. But I'm telling you what people will say, what they're already saying. She pulled a bonnet from her basket, plain, practical. When you leave this office, she said to Eliza, you wear this. Keep your head down. Don't make eye contact. And for God's sake, don't speak to anyone who doesn't speak to you first. Why are you helping me? Eliza asked. Martha was quiet for a moment. Then, because 15 years ago I came to this town with nothing. My husband had just died. I had a baby daughter and $10 to my name, and people helped me. Not because they had to, because they chose to. She handed Eliza the bonnet. Now I'm choosing to help you. Don't waste it. Then she was gone, the door closing behind her with a soft click. Eliza held the bonnet, stared at it like it was the most valuable thing she'd ever owned. Not everyone's bad, I said quietly. No, she agreed. Just most people. Caleb came back just after noon. I heard his boots on the sidewalk and knew it was him. Heavy, deliberate. The walk of a man who'd found what he was looking for and didn't like it. He came through the door and stopped when he saw Eliza. She was wearing Martha's dress now. Her hair was clean, braided. She looked younger, more herself. "You look better," Caleb said. "Mrs. Chen brought clothes." "That was kind of her." Eliza nodded. Then, "Did you find something?" Caleb looked at me, then back at her. "Yeah, I found something." He pulled out a piece of paper, set it on my desk. It was a ledger entry, copied in Caleb's rough hand. C. Thorne. Supplies. $47.50. Paid. And below it in different handwriting. C. Thorne. Special delivery. $200. Paid. "Someone added that second line after I paid," Caleb said. "Made it look like I'd ordered something else, something expensive." $200, I said. That's the going rate for a woman," Eliza said quietly. "In some places, if she's young, if she's—" She didn't finish, didn't need to. Caleb's jaw was tight. "The clerk who showed me this. He was scared, said he didn't add the line, said it showed up in the books about 2 weeks ago. Same time my payment cleared." "Did he say who added it?" I asked. "No, but he said there's only 3 people who have access to the ledgers after hours. Him, the yard manager, and the owner." "Who owns Benson's freight yard?" Caleb looked at me. His eyes were hard. "Silas Crow." The name hung in the air between us. Eliza made a small sound. Fear and recognition combined. "You know that name," Caleb said. Not a question. She nodded. "The men who took me, they mentioned him once, said he owned the route, that we were his property until delivery." "You're nobody's property," Caleb said. "Tell that to the men who bought me." "I'm trying to." He turned back to me. "Doc, I need to talk to Judge Price today, before Crow realizes I'm asking questions." "He might already know," I said. "If that clerk was scared enough, then we move fast." "Caleb, if you go to Price without solid evidence, Crow will just deny everything. He'll say the clerk made a mistake, that someone forged the entry, that's why we need Eliza to testify." Eliza stood up so fast her chair scraped the floor. "No, Eliza. No, I won't go in front of a judge. I won't stand in a courtroom and tell my story so a bunch of men can decide if I'm telling the truth. It's the only way to get justice. There's no justice for girls like me. There's just men deciding what we're worth." Her voice was rising, breaking. 5 years of fear and rage spilling out. Caleb held up his hands, gentle, careful. "I know it's not fair," he said. "I know the system is rigged. But if we don't use it, Crow wins. He keeps doing this. To other women. I don't care about other women," Eliza shouted. "I care about staying alive." The room went silent. She was breathing hard, shaking, her bandaged wrists pressed against her stomach like she was holding herself together. Caleb didn't move, didn't speak, just waited. I'd seen him do this with horses, with cattle, with anything that was hurt and scared. He gave them space, let them come to him. Finally, Eliza's breathing slowed. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "Don't be," Caleb said. I can't. I can't stand up there and—" She trailed off, sank back into the chair. Caleb pulled up another chair, sat across from her, not too close, giving her room. "You don't have to testify," he said. "Not if you don't want to." "Then what? Then we find another way." "What other way?" Caleb was quiet for a long moment. Then, "There's something I can do. Something that would make you legally untouchable, at least on paper." "What?" He glanced at me. I knew what he was thinking, knew where this was going. And I knew it was either brilliant or insane, maybe both. "We could get married," Caleb said. Eliza stared at him. I stared at him. Even Caleb looked a little surprised that he'd said it out loud. "What?" Eliza finally said. "If you were my wife," Caleb explained slowly, "legally, you'd be under my protection. Crow couldn't claim you as property, couldn't say you were part of a freight delivery. You'd be a married woman with a legal name beside mine." "That's—" Eliza struggled for words. "That's insane." "Maybe, but it would work." "Would it?" I asked. "Because Crow could still claim fraud, could say Caleb married her to hide evidence of a transaction." "Not if we do it right," Caleb said. "Not if we go to Judge Price today. Get it done legal and proper. With witnesses." "Witnesses who'd have to testify that the marriage was legitimate," I said. "Who'd have to swear it wasn't coerced or fraudulent." "Yes." "And you think Price would do that? Would marry you to a woman you met yesterday? If I explained the situation, he might." Eliza stood up again, paced to the window, wrapped her arms around herself. "You don't even know me," she said. "No. And I don't know you." "That's true. So, why would you do this?" Caleb was quiet. When he spoke, his voice was soft, almost too soft to hear. "Because once someone asked me to do something and I didn't. I won't make that mistake again." Eliza turned. "Your wife?" "Yes." "What did she ask you to do?" Caleb's face went distant, like he was seeing something far away. "To not let grief turn me into stone," he said. "To not become a man who looks away when people need help." "And you think marrying me is keeping that promise?" "I think watching you get dragged back to Crow would be breaking it." Eliza's eyes filled with tears. She blinked them back hard. "This is crazy," she said. "Yes. It won't work." "It might." "And if it doesn't? If Crow finds a way around it?" Caleb stood, walked to where she stood by the window, kept a respectful distance. "Then at least we tried," he said. "At least we fought back. Fighting back gets you killed. So does giving up." They stood there, two people who'd lost everything, staring at each other across 3 feet of space that felt like a canyon. "What happens after?" Eliza asked. "If we do this, if it works, what then?" "Then you decide what you want," Caleb said. "You want to leave, you leave. You want to stay, you stay. But the choice is yours, not Crow's, not anyone else's, yours. You'd do that, you'd marry me and then just let me go, if that's what you wanted." "Why?" Caleb's voice was gentle, final. "Because you're not property, Eliza. You're a person, and people get to choose." She turned away, looked out at the street, at the town going about its business while her whole world balanced on a knife edge. I watched them both, these two broken people trying to figure out if they could trust each other enough to survive. Finally Eliza spoke. "If we do this," she said, "it's just paperwork, just protection, nothing else." "Agreed. You don't expect—" "No," Caleb said firmly. "I expect nothing. This is a shield, not a cage." She was quiet for a long time. Then she turned and looked at him. "You paid for me," she said. The same words from last night, but different now. "Now do it." Caleb nodded once. "All right." He looked at me. "Doc, will you come? Be a witness?" I thought about what I was agreeing to, the risk, the complications, the fact that if this went wrong we'd all be implicated. Then I thought about Sarah Thorne dying in pain while morphine sat in Crow's warehouse. "Yes," I said, "I'll come." Judge Horace Price kept his office in a small building near the courthouse. 2 rooms, one for his clerk, one for him. He was 67 years old, white beard, sharp eyes behind wire spectacles. He'd been a judge in Missouri before the war, came west after because he said the frontier needed law more than civilization did. He looked up when we walked in. His eyes took in Caleb, me, Eliza with her bandaged wrists and borrowed dress. Dr. Hayes, he said. Mr. Thorne. And Eliza Ferris, Eliza said quietly. Miss Ferris. Price nodded. Then to Caleb. This about what I think it's about? If you think it's about a marriage certificate, Caleb said, then yes. Price leaned back in his chair. That was fast. You two met recently. Yesterday. And you want to get married today? Yes. Price looked at Eliza. Miss Ferris, are you being coerced in any way? No, Eliza said. Are you doing this of your own free will? She hesitated. Just a moment. But Price caught it. Miss Ferris, he said gently, I need you to be very clear about this. If you're being forced— I'm not being forced, Eliza interrupted. Not by him. By who then? She looked at me, at Caleb, at the judge. By circumstances, she said. By men who think women are things they can buy and sell. By a system that says I'm only worth what someone will pay for me. Price was very still. Go on. So we told him. All of it. The wagon, the note, the rope burns, the ledger at Benson's freight yard, the symbol that connected Eliza to Sarah's funeral. When we finished, Price was quiet for a long time. That's a serious accusation, he said finally, against a powerful man. Yes, Caleb said. Do you have proof? The ledger entry, Eliza's testimony, the physical evidence of her injuries. That's circumstantial at best. Any good lawyer would tear it apart. Which is why we need the marriage certificate, I said. It changes her legal status, makes her harder to claim as property. Price looked at me over his spectacles. You understand what you're asking me to do? I'd be making myself complicit in what Crow would call fraud. Or you'd be protecting a woman from being trafficked. Depends on who's telling the story. He stood, walked to his window, looked out at the street. I've been a judge for 30 years, he said. I've seen a lot of evil done under the guise of law. Men who used legal language to justify cruelty, who hid behind contracts and property rights while they destroyed lives. He turned back to us. I swore an oath to uphold the law, but I also swore to pursue justice, and sometimes those two things don't align. So you'll do it? Caleb asked. I'll do it, Price said. But I need to be very clear about something. What? Once I sign this certificate, you're married, legally bound. And if Crow comes after you, and he will, this piece of paper won't stop him. It'll just make him angrier. I understand, Caleb said. Price looked at Eliza. Do you understand, Miss Ferris? This will put a target on your back, and on Mr. Thorne's, and on anyone who helps you. Eliza's voice was steady. I already have a target on my back. At least this way I get to choose who stands beside me. Price nodded slowly. All right then, let's make this legal. The ceremony was simple. Bare bones, no flowers, no celebration, just words that bound two strangers together in the eyes of the law. Price read from his book, asked the required questions. Caleb answered clearly. So did Eliza. When it came time to sign, Eliza's hand shook. She had to set the pen down twice before she could write her name. But she wrote it. Eliza Ferris Thorne. Price signed as officiant. I signed as witness. His clerk signed as the second witness required by law. And just like that, it was done. Eliza was married. Protected. As much as paperwork could protect anyone. Price handed Caleb the certificate. Keep this safe. You're going to need it. Thank you, Judge. Don't thank me yet. You've just declared war on a man who doesn't lose gracefully. I know. Price looked at Eliza. Mrs. Thorne, if you need anything, legal advice, protection, you come to me. Understand? Yes, sir. We left the judge's office and stepped into afternoon sunlight. Tombstone was busy. People everywhere, shopping, talking, living their lives. None of them knew that 3 people had just gambled everything on a piece of paper and a prayer. What now? Eliza asked. Now we go back to my ranch, Caleb said. Get you somewhere safe while we figure out the next move. Your ranch isn't safe. That's where they left me. It's safer than town. Out there I can see trouble coming, hear troubles on every corner. I cleared my throat. Caleb, can I talk to you alone? We stepped a few feet away. Eliza stayed by the judge's door, arms wrapped around herself. What is it, Doc? There's something I need to tell you. About Sarah. About the morphine. His face went hard. What about it? So I told him. Everything I should have said 5 years ago. About the morphine shipment that never came. About the clerk's explanation. About how I'd checked later, months after Sarah died, and found records showing the morphine had been diverted to a mining camp north of Tucson. A mining camp owned by Silas Crow. Caleb didn't move, didn't speak, just stared at me while I confessed my failure. You knew this, he said finally. His voice was flat, dangerous. You knew Crow stole the medicine that could have saved her. I suspected. I didn't know for sure until... When? 6 months after she died. Maybe 8. I was going through old records and I saw... And you didn't tell me. I didn't want to. What hurt me? I'd just buried my wife, Doc. What did you think telling me would do? Make things worse. Worse than living with a lie. I had no answer for that, no defense. Caleb's hands were shaking, not from fear, from rage, pure and simple. All this time, he said, 5 years, I thought it was just bad luck, just the frontier being the frontier, and you knew someone killed her. I should have told you. Yes, you should have. He turned away, walked a few steps, came back. I need time, he said, to process this, to figure out what it means. Caleb. Not now, Doc. I can't deal with this right now. He walked back to Eliza. We're leaving. Come on. She looked between us, saw the tension, the anger. What happened? She asked. I'll tell you later. Right now we need to go. They started walking toward where Caleb had tied his horse. I stood there watching them leave, feeling the weight of my cowardice settle on my shoulders. I'd failed Sarah by not asking harder questions. I'd failed Caleb by not telling him the truth. And now I was watching him walk into danger with incomplete information and justified rage. Some doctor I was. I went back to my office and sat at my desk, stared at the white blanket still folded on the chair. The symbol stared back, mocking me. Outside the afternoon stretched on, hot, dusty, normal. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something bad was coming, something worse than what we'd already seen. I need to tell you about the day Sarah Thorne died, not because it's a pleasant memory, it's not, but because you need to understand what Caleb lost, what made him the man he became. It was March, still cold at night. The desert has a way of stealing heat once the sun goes down, leaves you shivering under blankets that felt sufficient an hour before. Sarah had been sick for 3 weeks, fever that wouldn't break, pain in her abdomen that kept getting worse. She was thin, so thin I could see every bone. Her skin had taken on a waxy quality, the color of old paper. I'd tried everything, poultices, willow bark tea, cold compresses, but the infection was spreading. I could see it in her eyes, the way the pain was eating her from the inside out. She needed morphine, strong enough to let her rest, strong enough to give her body time to fight. I'd ordered it 2 weeks earlier. Rush delivery. I'd paid extra, explained it was urgent. It never came. Every day I checked with the freight office. Every day the same story. Delayed. Held up. Should be here tomorrow. Tomorrow never came. By the 3rd week, Sarah couldn't stand, could barely speak. She lay in her bed at the ranch and Caleb sat beside her holding her hand. He didn't leave, not to eat, not to sleep, just sat there watching her suffer, powerless to stop it. I visited every day, checked her vitals, adjusted her position to ease the pain, lied and said she was getting better. We both knew the truth. On the day she died, I arrived in the afternoon. The house was quiet. Too quiet. Caleb met me at the door. His eyes were red, exhausted. "She wants to talk to you," he said. I went to her room. Sarah was propped up on pillows, awake, lucid, the way dying people sometimes get right before the end. "Samuel," she said. Her voice was weak but clear. She was the only person who called me by my first name. "Thank you for trying." "I'm not done trying," I lied. She smiled, a sad, knowing smile. "Yes, you are, and that's all right. Some fights you can't win." "Sarah, listen, I don't have much time. I need you to promise me something. Anything. Watch over Caleb. When I'm gone, he's going to try to disappear, into grief, into that ranch. Don't let him. Make him stay connected, to people, to the world. I'll try. Not try. Promise. I promise." She closed her eyes, breathed, opened them again. "And Samuel, if you ever find out what happened to that morphine, if there was a reason it didn't come, find out who's responsible. Why? Because Caleb will need someone to blame, and it's better if it's someone who deserves it." Those were almost her last words to me. To Caleb she said more. I heard it through the door while I waited outside, giving them privacy. "Don't let them turn you into stone," she said. "Don't let grief make you a man who looks away." Caleb promised, voice breaking. "I won't." "Yes, you will. For a while. That's all right. But don't stay there. Don't live in the dark forever." She died an hour later, Caleb holding one hand, me holding the other. It was peaceful as deaths go. She just stopped breathing, like she was tired of fighting. Caleb sat there for a long time after, not speaking, not crying, just sitting. Finally he looked at me. "Thank you for trying, Doc." "I'm sorry I couldn't." "You did what you could." "But I hadn't. Not really. I should have pushed harder. Should have gone to Tucson myself. Should have demanded answers. Instead, I'd accepted excuses, accepted delays, and Sarah Thorne died because of it. We buried her 2 days later, under a cottonwood on Caleb's ranch. The whole town came. Sarah had been beloved, the kind of woman who made the frontier feel less harsh. At the grave I noticed the flowers, a large arrangement. Too fancy for tombstone, beautiful white lilies with a card attached. No name, just a symbol, a circle with 2 lines through it. I thought it was a kind gesture, from someone who wanted to stay anonymous. I never thought to ask questions. God forgive me, I never asked questions. That memory was still heavy on me when the sun started setting. I was in my office reviewing Eliza's bandages when I heard it. Horses, multiple, coming fast down Allen Street. I looked out the window. 4 riders, well-dressed, well-armed. Not miners, not drifters. These were Crow's men. I knew it in my gut. They stopped in front of my office. One of them dismounted, tall, red scarf around his neck, Jack Porter. He tied his horse and walked to my door. Didn't knock, just opened it and stepped inside. I stood up, put myself between him and the back room where Eliza had been resting. "Office is closed," I said. Porter smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. "That's all right, Doc. I'm not here for medical attention." "Then what do you want?" "I'm here to collect property that was delivered to the wrong address." "There's no property here, just patients." Porter looked around. His eyes landed on the white blanket still folded on the chair. "That's mine," he said. "It's evidence." "Of what?" "Human trafficking." Porter laughed. Actually laughed. "That's a strong accusation, Doc. You want to be careful with words like that." "Or what?" "Or you might find yourself explaining to Sheriff Behan why you're harboring stolen goods." "Stolen goods?" "That's what the ledger says. Special delivery, paid for, never received by the buyer." "The buyer being Caleb Thorne." "If that's the name on the invoice." "Caleb didn't order a woman. He ordered supplies." Porter shrugged. "Paperwork says otherwise. Now where is she?" "Who?" "You know who. The girl, the product, whatever you want to call her." "She's not here." Porter's smile vanished. "Doc, I'm trying to be civil about this, but Mr. Crow doesn't like delays, and he doesn't like people interfering with his business. His business is trafficking women. His business is freight. What gets moved is just merchandise. The casual cruelty of it, the way he reduced Eliza to cargo, it made my blood boil. She's not merchandise," I said. "She's a person, and she's under my medical care. Not anymore, she's not." Porter moved toward the back room. I stepped in front of him. "You're not going back there." "Doc, I don't want to hurt you, but I will. Try it." We stood there, two men facing off over a door. Then Porter did something I didn't expect. He smiled again. "You know what, fine. Keep her for now. It doesn't matter." "Why not?" "Because Mr. Crow's on his way, and when he gets here all the medical care in the world won't protect her. Crow's coming here. Should be here within the hour. He likes to handle these things personally, make sure everyone understands how business works." Porter tipped his hat. "You have a nice evening, Doc, and when you see Mr. Thorne, tell him Mr. Crow sends his regards." He left, the door closing behind him with a soft click. I stood there, heart pounding, trying to figure out what to do. Crow was coming. Tonight, and he'd expect to find Eliza. I went to the back room, knocked. "Eliza, we have a problem." She opened the door, saw my face. "What happened?" "Crow's men were just here. They're looking for you, and Crow himself is coming." "When?" "Within the hour." She went pale, started shaking. "I need to leave. I need to—" "You need to get to Caleb's ranch, now, before they find you." "How? I don't have a horse, I don't—" "I'll take you. My wagon's out back. They'll follow us." "Not if we go the back way, through the canyon road. It's longer, but—" The door burst open. Not Porter this time. Someone else. Someone I recognized but hadn't seen in years. Silas Crow. He was 55, well-dressed in a suit that cost more than most miners made in a month. Clean-shaven, sharp eyes. The kind of man who looked respectable right up until you realized what he was selling. "Dr. Hayes," he said pleasantly. "Hope I'm not interrupting." I stepped in front of Eliza. "Office is closed." "So I hear. But I'm not here for medicine. I'm here for my property." "There's no property here." Crow walked into the room like he owned it, looked around. His eyes landed on Eliza. "Miss Ferris," he said, "we meet at last." Eliza didn't speak, just pressed herself against the wall. "You've caused quite a bit of trouble," Crow continued, "running off like that, making people think they can interfere with legitimate business." "Legitimate," I said. "You call human trafficking legitimate?" Crow looked at me, patient, like explaining something to a child. "I call fulfilling contracts legitimate. A buyer placed an order. I filled it. That's commerce. She's not an order. She's a person. She's merchandise that was paid for, and I intend to collect." Eliza found her voice, small but steady. "I'm married now, to Caleb Thorne. You can't—" Crow laughed. "Oh, I heard about that. Quick ceremony with Judge Price. Very romantic." "It's legal. For now. But fraud tends to get overturned, especially when there's evidence the marriage was just a scheme to hide stolen property." "She's not stolen," I said. "The ledger says otherwise. Says Mr. Thorne paid for a special delivery. Says I provided that delivery. Says everything was perfectly legal until you two decided to interfere. We have proof." "Of what?" "That I run a freight business that's not a crime, Doctor." He stepped closer to Eliza. "Come with me now, quietly, and I'll forget this little misunderstanding. We'll chalk it up to confusion. No harm done." "No," Eliza said. "No, I'm not going anywhere with you." Crow's pleasant expression didn't change, but something cold flickered in his eyes. "Miss Ferris, you don't seem to understand your situation. Your property in default. The buyer didn't accept delivery, which means you revert back to me. That's how contracts work. I'm not property. The law disagrees." Judge Price is an old man who made a mistake, one I'm sure he'll correct once I explain the situation. Crow turned to me. Dr. Hayes, you seem like a reasonable man, a man who understands how the world works. So let me be clear. If you continue to harbor stolen property, I'll have you arrested. If you continue to interfere with my business, I'll make sure you never practice medicine in this territory again. Threaten me all you want, I said. She's not leaving. Crow studied me. Then he smiled. You know what? That's fine. Keep her. For now. He walked to the door, stopped, turned back. Oh, and Dr. Hayes, you might want to ask Mr. Thorne about our history, about what he used to do before he met his sainted wife. What are you talking about? Ask him who taught him the freight business. Ask him who he worked for 10 years ago. Crow tipped his hat. Good evening. I'm sure we'll speak again soon. Then he was gone. Eliza and I stood in the lamplight trying to process what just happened. What did he mean? Eliza asked. About Caleb. I don't know, but we need to get you out of here, now. I grabbed my medical bag, helped Eliza gather the few things Martha had brought her. We were at the back door when we heard it. Hoofbeats. Fast. Coming from the direction of Caleb's ranch. I looked out. Caleb was riding hard. Behind him I could see smoke. His ranch was burning. Caleb's horse was lathered with sweat when he pulled up outside my office. The animal's sides heaved. Its eyes showed white. A horse ridden that hard doesn't stop because it wants to. It stops because it can't go another step. Behind Caleb, maybe 12 miles distant, an orange glow lit the horizon. Fire, big enough to see from town. He swung down from the saddle and nearly fell. Caught himself on the hitching post. His face was black with soot. His hands were blistered. The smell of smoke rolled off him in waves. They burned it, he said, voice hoarse, raw. Everything. Eliza was at the door. She looked at the glow, at Caleb. Understanding flickered across her face. Your ranch, she whispered. Barn, house, all of it. He coughed, spat black. Left a note nailed to the fence post. Said this is what happens when people steal property. I grabbed his arm, steadied him. Come inside. You need water. I need to get her out of Tombstone, he interrupted. Tonight, before Crow makes his next move. Where will you go? Tucson. Federal Marshal's office. Get someone who isn't in Crow's pocket. Caleb, the nearest federal marshal, is 3 days' ride, maybe 4. Then we ride for 4 days. He looked at Eliza. His eyes were red from smoke and something else, something harder to name. I'm sorry, he said. I thought keeping you at the ranch would be safer. I was wrong. It's not your fault, Eliza said quietly. Yes, it is. I knew what Crow was. I knew what he'd do. And I thought a piece of paper would stop him. He laughed, bitter and broken. I thought law meant something. I'd heard that laugh before, from men in the war who'd watched their companies get slaughtered while following orders, from people who'd learned that rules only protect those who write them. Come inside, I said again, before someone sees you. We got Caleb into the office. I poured water. He drank it like a man dying of thirst. Eliza stood by the window watching the street, watching for Crow's men. Did you see who did it? I asked. Caleb shook his head. I was riding back from town when I saw the smoke. By the time I got there, the house was already gone. They'd used accelerant, kerosene probably, wanted it to burn fast and hot. Was anyone there? Just Porter, standing by the fence, watching it burn. He saw me coming and rode off. Didn't even try to hide. They wanted you to know, I said. Wanted you to see what they can do. Well, I saw. He set down the cup, looked at me, really looked. Doc, I need to ask you something, and I need the truth. All right. When Crow was here, what did he say about me? I hesitated, not sure how much to reveal. Caleb, what did he say? He said I should ask you about your history with him, About what you did before Sarah. Caleb's jaw worked. And you want to know if it's true? Is what true? That I worked for him. That I taught him the freight business. That every system he's using now to move people like cargo, I helped build it. The room went quiet. Eliza was staring at Caleb, her face carefully blank, but I could see her processing, recalculating who this man was. You worked for Crow, she said. Not a question. 10 years ago, before I met Sarah, when I was young and stupid and thought money was the only thing that mattered. What did you do for him? Caleb stood, walked to the window, stared out at the dark street. I ran logistics, shipping routes, manifests, how to move freight through the territory without attracting attention, how to make paperwork disappear, how to use legitimate business to hide illegal operations. He turned, looked at Eliza. I didn't know what we were moving, not at first. I told myself it was just goods, just commerce. But deep down I knew. I chose not to ask questions because the money was good and asking questions was bad for business. When did you find out? I asked. About 2 years in. I was checking a shipment that had come in wrong, opened a crate I wasn't supposed to open, found 3 Chinese women inside, bound, gagged, drugged. Eliza made a small sound, pain or recognition or both. Caleb continued. I went to Crow, asked him what the hell we were doing. He smiled, said we were providing a service, that these women had signed contracts to work as domestics, that we were just facilitating their transportation. And you believed him? Eliza's voice was sharp. No, but I wanted to, so I told myself it wasn't my problem, that I was just the logistics man, that what happened after delivery wasn't my responsibility. How long did you keep working for him? I asked. Another 6 months, until I met Sarah. The cantina in Tucson was loud, men drinking away their wages, women working tables, music from a guitar that was slightly out of tune. Caleb Thorne sat in the corner with a whiskey he wasn't drinking, 28 years old. Good with numbers, better with systems, making more money than he'd ever seen growing up on a hardscrabble farm in Missouri, and hating every minute of it. He'd just come from a meeting with Crow, new route opening up, more freight, more opportunities, more money, more lies he'd have to tell himself at night. That's when she walked in. Sarah McKenna, 25, schoolteacher from Kansas who'd come west because she'd heard the frontier needed educated women. She had dark hair pulled back in a practical bun, plain dress, glasses that made her look scholarly. She sat at the bar and ordered tea, in a cantina, like it was the most natural thing in the world. Caleb found himself staring. She noticed, turned, looked at him directly. "Can I help you?" she asked. "Sorry, didn't mean to stare." "Then stop." He almost laughed. Most women in frontier towns were either too forward or too shy. She was neither, just direct. "Fair enough. Can I buy you that tea?" "Why?" "Why what?" "Why do you want to buy me tea? What do you expect in return?" Caleb blinked. "Conversation." "About what?" "I don't know. Whatever people talk about." Sarah studied him, like she was reading a book written in his face. "You look sad," she said finally. "Do I?" "Yes, like you're doing something you hate and can't figure out how to stop." The observation hit harder than it should have. "That's specific." "I'm a teacher. I'm trained to notice when people are miserable." She picked up her tea and walked to his table, sat across from him without asking permission. "So," she said, "what is it you do that makes you look like that?" "Like what?" "Like you're drowning and pretending you can swim." Caleb set down his whiskey. "I move freight, logistics. It's boring. Boring doesn't make people look like that. Boring makes people look bored. You look guilty. You don't know me." "No, but I'm good at reading people, and you're carrying something heavy, something you don't want to talk about." Caleb should have left, should have stood up and walked away from this woman who saw too much. Instead he asked, Do you want to know what you're moving? She tilted her head. What? That's what someone asked me 2 months ago. Do you know what you're moving? And I said no. And she said, then you're choosing not to know. Sarah leaned back. Smart woman. She was trapped in a crate with 2 others, being shipped like cargo. The words came out before he could stop them, the confession he'd been holding inside for weeks. Sarah didn't flinch, didn't gasp, just listened. And you realized your freight business was trafficking people, she said quietly. Yes. But you kept working anyway. I told myself I was just doing logistics, that I wasn't responsible for what came after. And now I can't sleep, can't eat, can't look at myself in the mirror without seeing those women's faces. Sarah sipped her tea, thought for a moment. So quit. It's not that simple. Why not? Because my boss doesn't accept resignations. Because I know too much. Because you're afraid. Caleb met her eyes. Yes. Sarah set down her cup. Fear is understandable, but it's not an excuse. If you know what's happening and you do nothing, you're complicit. That's just a fact. I know. So what are you going to do about it? I don't know. She stood, picked up her cup. When you figure it out, come find me. I teach at the schoolhouse on 5th Street. Until then, I don't want to know you. She walked out, left Caleb sitting there with his guilt and his whiskey and her words ringing in his ears. If you know what's happening and you do nothing, you're complicit. He quit the next day. Crow didn't take it well. Sarah gave me an ultimatum, Caleb said. Quit or lose any chance with her. So I quit. And Crow? I asked. He said I was making a mistake, that I'd never find work in the territory again, that he'd make sure I regretted it. But he let you go. Eventually, after I signed papers saying I'd never talk about what I saw, never testify against him, never interfere with his business. Caleb's voice was bitter. I signed. Because I was a coward. Because I wanted Sarah more than I wanted justice for those women. Eliza was very still. So this is personal. For both of you. Yes. I betrayed him by quitting. He spent 10 years waiting for the right moment to hurt me. And when he saw my name on a freight ledger, he saw his chance. He sent me to you on purpose, Eliza said, knowing you'd help, knowing it would force you to break your agreement, and giving him legal cover to destroy me. I sat down, let the pieces fall into place. That's why he burned your ranch, I said. Not just to punish you, to force you to run, to make you look guilty. And if I run to Tucson to find a federal marshal, he can claim I'm fleeing the scene of a crime, harboring stolen property, fraud. But if you don't run, Eliza said quietly, he'll kill you. Caleb looked at her. Not just me, you, Doc, anyone who knows the truth. The lamplight flickered. Outside Tombstone went about its business. People drinking, gambling, living, none of them knowing that 3 people were planning what might be a suicide mission. So we go to Tucson, I said, get ahead of his story, get to the marshal before Crow can spin this his way. We'll need proof, Caleb said, the marriage certificate, the ledger entry, Eliza's testimony. And Porter, I added. They both looked at me. What about Porter? Caleb asked. He's the one who delivered Eliza. If we can get him to testify, he won't. He's loyal to Crow. Everyone has a price. Maybe Porter's is not hanging for human trafficking. Caleb thought about that. We'd have to catch him first. He's staying at the Grand Hotel. I saw him check in this morning. You want us to kidnap one of Crow's men? Eliza said. In the middle of Tombstone. I want us to arrest him, I corrected. For assault, for trespassing, for any crime we can make stick long enough to get him to Tucson. We're not lawmen. No. But citizens can make arrests if they witness a crime. Caleb smiled, a hard, dangerous smile. Doc, Are you suggesting we provoke Porter into attacking us so we have cause to arrest him? I'm suggesting Porter has a temper, and if he thought Eliza was still in my office, he'd come looking. Yes. Eliza shook her head. This is insane. Probably, I agreed. But it's the only way to get a witness who can testify that Crow ordered your delivery. And if it goes wrong, then we're no worse off than we are now. Caleb stood, checked his gun, 6 rounds. He reloaded from a box in his saddlebag. All right, he said. Let's make ourselves some evidence. We set the trap an hour later. I sent word through Martha Chen's nephew that Eliza was still at my office, that she was refusing to leave, that I didn't know what to do. The boy was 11, eager, the kind who'd repeat gossip if it made him feel important. Within 30 minutes, the story was all over Allen Street. Within an hour, Jack Porter was walking toward my office. Caleb and I waited in the shadows beside the building. Eliza was inside, armed with my scalpel and instructions to scream if Porter got past us. Porter came alone, confident. A man used to intimidating doctors and women. He opened the door without knocking. Caleb stepped out behind him, put a gun to his spine. Don't move. Porter froze. Thorne. Porter. Nice night for a walk. I'm just here to talk to the doc. No, you're not. You're here to collect property that doesn't belong to you. That's called theft, and citizens can arrest thieves. Porter started to turn. Caleb pressed the gun harder. I said don't move. I came around from the other side, held up rope. Mr. Porter, you're under arrest for attempted kidnapping. You can come peacefully, or we can make this difficult. Your choice. Porter laughed. You two are out of your minds. Crow will have you. Crow will have to explain to a federal marshal why his employee was trying to kidnap a married woman from a doctor's office. The laugh died. Porter's shoulders tensed. This won't work. You can't just... Can't what, arrest a man for breaking the law? I thought that was how justice worked. There's no justice here, just men with guns. Then I guess it's good we're armed, Caleb said. I tied Porter's hands, not gently. He fought, but Caleb's gun at his back kept him cooperative. When he was secured, we brought him inside. Eliza looked at him, really looked, and something cold passed across her face. I know you, she said. Porter smirked. Sure you do, honey. I delivered you. No, from before. You were there when they took me. The smirk faltered. You and 2 others. You came to my father's farm, said he owed money, said I was payment. I don't know what you're... You grabbed my arm when I tried to run. You said this one's going to fetch a good price. Look at those eyes. Porter's face went pale. You remember now, Eliza said. Her voice was steel. You remember because I fought, and you hit me. Right here. She touched her cheek, where I'd seen the bruise that first night. I remember your voice, she continued. The way you laughed when my father begged you not to take me. The way you said, should have paid your debts. Porter looked at Caleb, at me, trying to gauge whether this testimony would matter. Her word against mine, he said. Nobody's going to believe. A federal marshal might, I said, especially when we add it to the ledger evidence, the delivery note, the fact that Crow's men burned Caleb's ranch tonight. You can't prove that. Sure we can. Half of Tombstone saw the fire, and you were seen at the site. Porter's confidence was cracking, just slightly, but enough. What do you want? He asked. The truth, Caleb said. On the record, in front of a marshal. I tell you anything, Crow will kill me. And if you don't, you'll hang for trafficking. Your choice. Porter looked at Eliza, at her bandaged wrists, at the hatred in her eyes. She's just one girl, he said, almost defensively. Just one. How many others? Eliza asked. How many girls like me? I don't keep count. Guess. Porter was quiet for a long moment. Then, dozens, maybe more, over the years. The room went silent. Dozens, maybe more. I felt sick. Where are they now? Eliza asked, her voice shaking. Brothels, mining camps, private buyers, wherever Crow could sell them. And you helped. I did what I was paid to do. You destroyed lives. I moved cargo. Eliza moved so fast I almost didn't see it. She grabbed the scalpel from the desk and put it against Porter's throat. I am not cargo, she hissed. Porter went very still. Easy now. My name is Eliza Ferris. I am 23 years old. I grew up in Kansas. I loved reading. I wanted to be a teacher. I had a life before you took it. The blade pressed harder. A thin line of blood appeared. Say my name, Eliza demanded. What? Say it. Say I'm a person, not cargo, not property. A person. Porter's eyes were wide, scared. You're a person. My name. Eliza Ferris. Again. Eliza Ferris. She held the blade there a moment longer, then stepped back. Her hands were shaking. The scalpel clattered to the floor. Caleb caught her as her legs gave out. I've got you, he said quietly. I've got you. She sobbed once, harsh and broken, then forced it down. I'm all right, she said. But she wasn't. None of us were. Porter slumped in the chair, blood trickling from the shallow cut on his neck. She's crazy, he muttered. No, I said. She's traumatized. There's a difference. And you're the one who did it. I cleaned the cut, bandaged it. Professional courtesy even for scum. We leave in an hour, Caleb said. Get your things. We're riding to Tucson. With him? Eliza asked, looking at Porter. With him. He's our witness whether he likes it or not. Crow will come after us. I'm counting on it. Better to face him on the road where we can see him coming than wait for him to burn us out. I grabbed my medical bag, my gun, a bedroll, and supplies for 4 days' travel. You don't have to come, Doc, Caleb said. This isn't your fight. Yes, it is. Has been for 5 years. I'm just finally doing something about it. We loaded Porter onto a horse, hands tied to the saddle horn, feet roped under the animal's belly. He couldn't ride off even if he wanted to. Eliza changed into riding clothes Martha had provided. Practical dress, boots, hat to keep the sun off. She looked different, harder, like something had crystallized inside her during that confrontation with Porter. Ready? Caleb asked her. She looked at me, at Caleb, at the road ahead. No, she said, but let's go anyway. We left Tombstone just after midnight, 4 riders moving fast through darkness. The desert at night is a different world. Cold, quiet, the stars so bright they look close enough to touch. The only sounds are hoofbeats and leather and the occasional cry of a coyote that seems to come from everywhere and nowhere. We rode north first, toward Benson, then cut east, taking the canyon road that would eventually loop south toward Tucson. Longer route, but less traveled. Fewer places for Crow's men to ambush us. Caleb led, then Eliza, then Porter. I brought up the rear, watching our back trail for signs of pursuit. Around 3 in the morning we stopped to rest the horses. Eliza slid from her saddle and nearly collapsed. Caleb caught her. You all right? Just tired and sore. I haven't ridden in years. We can rest longer if you need. No, keep moving. The farther from Tombstone, the better. I checked Porter. He was slumped in his saddle, exhausted, defeated. How you holding up? I asked. Go to hell, Doc. That's the spirit. Caleb built a small fire, just enough to boil water for coffee. We sat around it, warming our hands, not talking. The silence stretched, comfortable despite the circumstances. Finally, Eliza spoke. Can I ask you something? Caleb looked up. Sure. Why did you really help me? And don't say it's because of Sarah. There's more to it than that. Caleb poured coffee, handed her a cup. You want the honest answer? Yes. Because the night I quit working for Crow, I went home and got drunk, told myself I was a good person for walking away, that I'd done the right thing. He sipped his coffee, stared into the fire. But Sarah set me straight. She said quitting wasn't enough. That if I really wanted to make things right, I had to actively work against what I'd helped build. That redemption requires action, not just regret. And you've spent 10 years avoiding that, I said quietly. Yes. I buried Sarah, buried myself, told myself I'd done enough just by stopping. He looked at Eliza. Then I found you under that white blanket, tied up like cargo, and I heard Sarah's voice in my head, clear as day, saying, "Don't look away." So you didn't. No. But it wasn't noble. It was necessary. For my own soul, if nothing else. Eliza nodded slowly. That's more honest than most people would be. I'm done lying, to myself or anyone else. Porter spoke up from where he sat tied to a tree. Real touching. But you're all going to die for this. You know that, right? Maybe, Caleb said. But at least we'll die trying to do something right. That's supposed to comfort you when Crow puts a bullet in your head, more than living as a coward would. Porter laughed, bitter and tired. You think you're better than me, but you're not. You built the system I use. You taught Crow everything he knows. The only difference between us is you got out and I didn't. The difference, Caleb said quietly, is I'm trying to tear it down now. You're still defending it. Because it feeds me, keeps me alive. What's your excuse? Caleb had no answer for that. We finished our coffee in silence, put out the fire, mounted up. The sky was starting to lighten in the east, dawn coming whether we were ready or not. We rode on. The canyon road was brutal, narrow, rocky. One wrong step and a horse could break a leg, but it kept us hidden. The high walls blocked sight lines, made it hard for anyone to track us from a distance. We rode single file, Caleb in front navigating by memory. He'd used this route years ago when he worked for Crow, back when knowing every back road was part of the job. Now that knowledge was saving us. Around noon we stopped to water the horses at a spring. Eliza dismounted carefully, wincing. Her inner thighs would be raw from riding. City girl learning frontier lessons the hard way. I gave her salve. For the saddle sores. Thank you. How are the wrists? She unwrapped one bandage. The rope burns were healing, slow but clean, no infection spreading. Better, she said. Everything else hurts worse now. That's normal. Pain moves around when your body's processing trauma. How long until it stops? The physical pain, a week or two. And the other kind? I didn't answer, because I didn't have an answer. Some pain you carry forever. You just learn to walk with the weight. Caleb was checking our back trail, studying the canyon walls for signs of pursuit. See anything? I asked. No, but that doesn't mean they're not there. You think Crow sent men after us? I'd be surprised if he didn't. Question is whether they're ahead of us or behind. That was a chilling thought. The idea that Crow might have predicted our route, might have men waiting at the canyon's end. How much farther to Tucson? Eliza asked. 3 days if we push, 4 if we're careful. And you think we should be careful. I think we should stay alive. We filled canteens, let the horses rest. Porter sat in the shade, hands still bound, saying nothing. I walked over to him. You thirsty? What do you care? Professional obligation. Can't let prisoners die of dehydration. I gave him water. He drank it greedily. You're wasting your time, he said after. Crow's already in Tucson. Probably got there yesterday. He'll have the law waiting for you. How do you know? Because that's what I'd do. Why chase when you can just wait for them to ride into a trap? I thought about that. About Crow's resources. His connections. He has people in Tucson, I said. He has people everywhere, Doc. That's what money buys. Loyalty. Or the appearance of it. Who in Tucson? Porter smiled. Why would I tell you? Because if we ride into a trap, you die too. Maybe. Or maybe Crow lets me go as a reward for keeping my mouth shut. You really think he'd let you live after you've seen us hurt our plans? The smile faltered. Crow doesn't leave loose ends. I continued. "You know that. You're just as dead as we are if this goes wrong." Porter was quiet for a long moment. Then, "Deputy, name's Frank Moss. He's in Crow's pocket. Has been for years. Anyone else?" "Maybe the sheriff. Maybe some of the courthouse staff. I don't know everyone, just Moss for sure." I walked back to Caleb and Eliza, told them what Porter said. "So we can't trust the local law," Caleb said. "No, we go straight to the federal marshal. If he's even there. Federal marshals travel circuits. Could be weeks before one comes through. Then we find Judge Price. He has connections. He can help us navigate." Eliza looked nervous. "Price is just one man, against Crow's whole network. One honest man is worth 10 corrupt ones. That's idealistic. Maybe, but it's all we've got." We mounted up, rode on. The canyon walls grew higher, the path more treacherous. Loose rock made the horses skittish. Around mid-afternoon we heard it. Thunder, distant but growing closer. I looked up. The sky was clear, bright blue, no clouds. "That's not thunder," Caleb said. "What is it?" "Dust storm, coming fast from the west." Even as he said it, I saw it. A wall of brown rolling across the desert, blotting out the sun, moving like a living thing. "How long?" Eliza asked. 20 minutes, maybe less." "Can we outrun it?" "No, we need to find shelter, now." Caleb spurred his horse forward, searching the canyon walls for an overhang. A cave, anything. The wind picked up, first a breeze, then stronger, carrying the smell of dust and distance. "There," Caleb pointed, "a small depression in the rock face. Not quite a cave, but better than nothing." We rode hard. The storm was closing. The light was changing. Everything taking on a strange orange cast. We reached the overhang with minutes to spare. Dismounted. Led the horses as far back as we could. Covered our faces with bandanas. Then the storm hit. If you've never been in a desert dust storm, you can't understand what it's like. The wind doesn't just blow. It screams. It tears at your clothes and skin. It fills your eyes, your nose, your mouth with grit that tastes like ancient earth. The dust is everywhere. In the air. In your lungs. Between your teeth. Under your eyelids. Visibility drops to nothing. You can't see your hand in front of your face. The horses panicked, pulled at their reins. We had to hold them, talk to them, keep them from bolting into the storm and disappearing forever. We huddled under the overhang. 4 people and 4 horses pressed together for survival. Caleb was on one side of me, Eliza on the other. Even Porter was pressed close, enemies and allies unified by nature's indifference. The storm lasted an hour, maybe more. Hard to tell time when the world is just wind and dust and the desperate act of breathing. At some point Eliza grabbed my arm, held tight, not out of affection, out of fear. The primal need to touch something solid when everything else is chaos. I let her hold on. On my other side, Caleb was talking to his horse, low, steady, words I couldn't hear but could feel. The kind of voice you use when you're trying to convince someone or yourself that everything will be all right. Gradually the wind lessened. The visibility improved. The world came back into focus. We emerged from the overhang covered head to toe in dust, looking like ghosts, like we'd been buried and dug ourselves out. The horses were spooked but alive. The supplies were intact. We'd survived. Caleb scouted ahead, made sure the path was still passable. The storm had shifted rocks, changed the landscape slightly, but the route was still clear. "We keep moving," he said. "Make up lost time." "The horses need rest," I protested. "The horses need water and shelter. We won't find either standing here." He was right. The storm had emptied our canteens with dust. We needed to reach the next water source before dark. We rode on, slower now, conserving energy. Eliza rode beside me. Her face was streaked with dust-turned mud from sweat. Her eyes were red. "You all right?" I asked. "I've been better. You?" "Same." "How much farther?" "To water. Maybe 2 hours. To Tucson. 2 more days at least. She was quiet for a moment. Then, thank you. For what? For letting me hold on to you during the storm. You needed something solid. Yes, I did. We rode in silence for a while. Then she spoke again. Can I tell you something? Something I haven't told anyone. Of course. When they took me from my father's farm, I wasn't scared at first. I was angry. I fought, screamed, tried to run. That's natural. But then they drugged me. Laudanum, I think. And when I woke up, I was in a wagon with other women. 5 of us, all tied up, all being moved like cargo. Her voice caught. And I realized anger wouldn't save me. Fighting wouldn't save me. Nothing I did would matter because to them I wasn't a person. I was just merchandise. Eliza, that's when the fear started. Real fear. Not fear of pain or death. Fear that I'd disappeared. That I'd become nothing. Just a line item in a ledger. She looked at me. Her eyes were wet, but she wasn't crying. When Caleb cut those ropes, when you examined my wrists and called me Miss Ferris instead of just the girl, that was the first time I felt like a person again. I didn't know what to say. No words seemed adequate. You're not merchandise, I said finally. You never were. You're Eliza Ferris, and that matters. She nodded. I'm starting to believe that again. We rode on into the lengthening afternoon. We made camp at a small spring as the sun was setting. Good water, decent shelter, a stand of mesquite for firewood. Caleb built a fire while I tended the horses. Eliza unpacked what food we had. Dried meat, hard biscuits, not much but enough. Porter sat where we tied him, watching, calculating. You really think you can keep this up? He asked. 3 days to Tucson with me in tow. That's the plan, Caleb said. Plans change, especially when Crow's involved. We'll adapt, Porter laughed. You sound like you used to, back when you worked for him. Always had a contingency, always 3 steps ahead. I learned from the best, Caleb said. No pride in it, just fact. You were good at it too. Better than me, better than most. Crow used to say you could move anything anywhere and make it look legal. That was a long time ago. Not that long. 10 years. Some skills don't fade. Eliza was listening. I could see her trying to reconcile the man who'd cut her ropes with the man who'd helped build Crow's empire. Tell me something, she said to Caleb. When you worked for Crow, when you moved those women, did you ever wonder what happened to them? Caleb was quiet for a long time. The fire crackled. Somewhere a coyote called. Every day, he said finally. I wonder every single day. But you didn't go back for them. No. Why not? Because I was a coward. Because I told myself it wasn't my problem. Because I chose my own comfort over their lives. He looked at her directly. I can give you reasons, excuses, rationalizations, but the truth is simple. I knew what was happening and I did nothing. That makes me complicit, no matter how much I've tried to convince myself otherwise. And now, Eliza asked, is this redemption saving me so you can feel better about the ones you didn't save? The question was harsh, but fair. Caleb didn't look away. Maybe, partly, but also because it's the right thing to do, even if my motives aren't pure. Motives are never pure, I said. We all carry mixed reasons for what we do. That's convenient philosophy, Doc. It's honest philosophy. You want to help Eliza because it's right. Also, because it helps you process guilt. Both things can be true. Eliza poked at the fire with a stick, watched sparks rise into the night sky. My father used to say you can't change the past. You can only choose what you do next. Your father sounds wise, I said. He was, until debt made him desperate, until desperate made him weak. Is that why you're not angry at him for what happened? She was quiet for a long moment. I'm furious at him, but I also understand. When you're drowning, you grab for anything, even if it's your own daughter. The pain in those words, the complexity of loving someone who betrayed you. "Do you think he's still alive?" I asked gently. "I don't know, and I don't know if I want him to be. Is that terrible?" "It's human." We ate in silence. The food was terrible, but we were hungry enough not to care. After Caleb set up watches, 2 hours each, he'd take first, then me, then Eliza if she felt up to it. I lay down on my bedroll and stared at the stars, thousands of them, infinite and indifferent. Somewhere out there, Crow was planning, moving pieces, setting traps, and we were riding straight toward them. I must have dozed because when Caleb shook my shoulder, I woke disoriented. "Your watch, Doc." "Anything quiet, too quiet maybe." I sat up, let my eyes adjust. Caleb settled into his bedroll. Within minutes he was asleep, the deep sleep of exhausted men. Eliza was awake. I could see her eyes reflecting firelight. "Can't sleep?" I asked quietly. "Every time I close my eyes, I'm back in that wagon." "That's normal. Trauma does that." "How long until it stops?" "I don't know. Different for everyone." She sat up, wrapped her blanket around her shoulders, came to sit by the fire. "Can I tell you the rest of it?" she asked. "If you want to." So she did. The farm in Kansas was small, 70 acres of wheat and hope. Eliza's father had worked it for 20 years. Good years and bad, mostly bad lately. The drought had hit hard, 3 seasons of crops that barely paid for the seed. Loans from the bank, loans from private lenders when the bank said no more, loans from men who smiled when they wrote the numbers down. Eliza was helping her mother with laundry the day they came. 3 men on horses, city clothes, clean boots. Porter was one of them, the one with the red scarf. Her father met them at the fence. Eliza watched from the porch, couldn't hear the words but could read the body language. Her father's shoulders slumping, the men gesturing, firm, final. Then her father looked back at the house, at her, and she knew. She ran, through the back door, across the field, toward the tree line where she could hide. But Porter was fast, caught her before she made it 50 yards. "Easy now," he said, grabbed her arm, twisted it behind her back. "This'll go smoother if you don't fight." "Let me go." "Can't do that. Your daddy owes money, your payment." "I'm not property." Porter laughed. "Tell that to the contract he signed." He dragged her back to the house. Her father was crying. Her mother was screaming. But neither tried to stop them, because stopping meant they'd lose everything. The farm, the house, their lives. So they let their daughter be taken. The last thing Eliza saw was her mother's face, not angry, not sad, just empty, like something inside her had broken beyond repair. They put Eliza in a wagon, tied her wrists, gave her laudanum to keep her quiet. The next weeks were a blur, moving from one location to another, always drugged, always tied, always treated like cargo. Other women came and went, some fought, some gave up. One tried to escape and was beaten so badly she couldn't walk. Eliza learned to be still, to conserve energy, to wait for an opportunity that never came. Until the morning she woke up in Caleb's wagon, under a white blanket, at a ranch in Arizona, and heard a man say, "I didn't buy you." Those 4 words, the first kindness in a month of horror. Eliza finished her story, stared into the fire. "I hate my father," she said quietly, "and I love him. And I don't know which feeling is true." "Both are true," I said. "People are complicated, especially family." "Do you think he knew what would happen to me?" "I think he knew you'd be taken. I don't think he let himself imagine beyond that. Sometimes denial is the only way to survive terrible choices." "That's generous." "Maybe. Or maybe I'm just old enough to understand that desperate people do desperate things." We sat in silence. The fire burned low. I added wood. Watched it catch. "Dr. Hayes." "Yes." "Why are you really here?" "Caleb has guilt. I have survival. But you, what's your reason?" I thought about Sarah Thorne dying in pain, about 5 years of carrying the weight of questions I didn't ask. I spent 5 years being a doctor who treats symptoms, I said. I want to try being a man who addresses causes. And the cause is Crow. The cause is a system that lets men like Crow exist, that looks the other way when women disappear, that values property over people. You can't fix the system, Doc. No, but I can stand against it. That has to count for something. Eliza nodded slowly. I hope you're right. My watch ended. I woke Eliza for hers, gave her the rifle, showed her how to hold it. You see anything? Anything at all? You wake us. Don't try to be brave. I stopped trying to be brave a long time ago. Now I just try to survive. That's brave enough. I lay down, fell into restless sleep full of dust storms and burning ranches and women under white blankets. When I woke, the sun was rising. Eliza was still on watch. Alert, steady. She'd survived the night. We all had. 2 more days to Tucson. We broke camp at dawn, mounted up, rode on. The canyon was opening up now, the walls lower, the path wider, easier riding, but also more exposed. Around mid-morning, Caleb stopped, held up his hand. We halted, waited. What is it? I asked. Dust. Behind us. 3, maybe 4 riders. I looked back, saw nothing. But Caleb had range eyes, could see things the rest of us missed. How far? 2 miles, maybe less. Moving fast. Crow's men. Who else? We pushed the horses harder, but they were already tired from yesterday. The storm, the rocky terrain. The riders behind us were on fresh mounts, gaining. We can't outrun them, Caleb said. Not like this. So what do? He scanned the landscape, looking for advantage, for terrain we could use. There. That rise, good sight lines, defensible position. We rode hard for the rise, reached it with minutes to spare, dismounted, took positions behind rocks. Caleb checked his rifle. 6 rounds, plus the revolver. Maybe 20 shots total. I had my pistol. 8 rounds. I wasn't much of a shot, but at close range I'd do damage. Eliza had nothing. Caleb gave her his spare revolver. You know how to use this? Point and shoot, basically, but only if they get close. Don't waste bullets. Porter was tied to a tree, watching, smirking. This is where it ends, he said. You're outnumbered, outgunned. Maybe, Caleb said, but we have high ground. The riders came into view, 4 of them, just like Caleb said. They slowed when they saw us positioned on the rise, stopped about 100 yards out. One of them called out, Thorne, we just want the girl and Porter. You and the doc can ride away. No deal, Caleb shouted back. Then you die here. So do some of you. The riders conferred, trying to decide if it was worth the cost. Finally the lead rider spoke again. Crow's willing to negotiate. You bring the girl to Tucson. We escort. Everybody stays civil. And Porter, he comes too. This doesn't have to be violent. Caleb looked at me, at Eliza. What do you think? He asked quietly. I think they'll kill us the moment we come down, I said. Probably. But if we fight, someone dies for sure. Maybe all of us. Eliza spoke. Her voice was steady, final. I'm not going back. I'd rather die here than let them take me. Caleb nodded, turned back to the riders. She says no. I say no. So unless you're willing to die for Crow's money, I suggest you turn around. The riders were quiet, weighing options. Then one of them made the decision for everyone. He drew his gun and fired. The shot went wide, hit rock a foot from my head. Caleb returned fire, clean, precise. One of the riders dropped from his saddle. Then everything was chaos. The gunfight lasted maybe 2 minutes. Felt like hours. Bullets spanged off rocks. Horses screamed. Men shouted. Caleb was calm, each shot deliberate, each bullet counting. I fired wild, hoping volume would compensate for accuracy. Eliza didn't fire at all, just crouched behind cover hands over her ears trying to survive. When the shooting stopped, 2 riders were down. 1 dead, 1 wounded. The other 2 were riding hard in the opposite direction, retreating. For now. Caleb stood, checked his ammunition. 3 rounds left in the rifle, 4 in the revolver. "They'll be back," he said, "with more men. We need to move." We grabbed supplies, mounted fast, left the canyon at a gallop. Behind us, the wounded rider called for help, his voice fading as we put distance between us and the battlefield. "You killed a man," Eliza said to Caleb, her voice shaking. "Yes." "Does it bother you?" "Yes, but letting them take you would bother me more." We rode hard for an hour, then slowed to spare the horses. Porter was silent. His smirk was gone. He'd seen death up close and realized he might be next. "Still think Crow's going to save you?" I asked. "Crow doesn't save anyone. He uses people until they're not useful anymore." "Then why stay loyal?" "Because being useful keeps you alive. Being a problem gets you killed." "Seems like you're a problem now." Porter didn't respond, but his face said enough. We camped that night in a dry wash. No fire. Too risky. We ate cold food, drank lukewarm water, tried to sleep in shifts, but nobody slept much. We all knew what was coming. Crow would send more men, better men, and eventually they'd catch us. Our only hope was reaching Tucson first. One more day. We rose before dawn, rode in darkness, pushing hard. The landscape was changing, the desert giving way to something greener, more settled. We were approaching civilization, towns, witnesses, law. Whether that law would help or hurt us remained to be seen. Around noon we saw it. Tucson in the distance, adobe buildings, church spires, the organized chaos of a territorial capital. "We made it," Eliza breathed. "Not yet," Caleb said. "The hard part's still ahead." We rode into Tucson in late afternoon, dusty, exhausted, looking like exactly what we were, fugitives with a bound prisoner. People stared, whispered, made way. We headed straight for the federal marshal's office. It was closed. Sign on the door. "Marshal on circuit. Return in 2 weeks." "Damn it," Caleb muttered. "Now what?" Eliza asked. "Judge Price. He'll know who we can trust." We turned toward the courthouse. That's when we saw him. Deputy Frank Moss, standing on the courthouse steps, badge gleaming, gun on his hip, waiting, like he'd known exactly when we'd arrive. Deputy Frank Moss stood on those courthouse steps like a man who owned them. He was 34, average height, average build, the kind of face you'd forget 5 minutes after meeting him, which is exactly what made him useful to men like Crow. Nobody remembers the unremarkable. But I remembered him now. Remembered seeing him at the edge of town a few times, always watching, always waiting. A deputy who seemed more interested in commerce than justice. He smiled when he saw us. Not friendly, just satisfied, like a man who'd bet on the right horse. "Mr. Thorne," he called out. "Dr. Hayes, and the young lady, right on schedule." We stopped our horses 20 feet from the steps, close enough to talk, far enough to run if needed. "We're here to see Judge Price," Caleb said. His voice was level, controlled. "Judge Price is unavailable. Then we'll wait." "You'll do more than wait. You're under arrest." "On what charge?" Moss pulled out a folded paper. "Warrant, official-looking seal." He read from it like he was reciting poetry. "Caleb Thorne, you're charged with theft of property valued at $200, destruction of freight company records, and conspiracy to defraud." "That's a lie," I said. Moss looked at me. "Dr. Hayes, you're charged with harboring stolen property and obstruction of justice." "And me?" Eliza asked. Her voice was quiet but steady. Moss's smile widened. "You're not charged with anything, miss. You're evidence. To be returned to rightful ownership pending resolution of the theft charges." "I'm not evidence. I'm a person." "The law disagrees." Caleb's hand drifted toward his gun. Moss saw it, shook his head. "I wouldn't. I've got 6 men in windows surrounding this square. You draw, you die. All of you." I looked around, saw movement in second-story windows, rifles, just like he said. We were trapped. Porter spoke up from his horse, still bound, still calculating. "Moss, tell Crow I kept my mouth shut. Tell him I'm still loyal." Moss looked at Porter like he was examining a bug. "Crow says you failed, says you let them take you without a fight, says that makes you unreliable." Porter's face went pale. "I didn't fail. I was ambushed. Crow don't accept excuses, Porter, you know that. But I can still be useful. I can testify that they kidnapped me, that—" "Crow don't need your testimony. He's got paperwork. He's got witnesses. He's got everything he needs." The realization hit Porter like a physical blow. He wasn't being rescued. He was being discarded. "You're just going to leave me?" he asked, voice small, scared. "You're a loose end, Porter, and Crow don't like loose ends." Moss nodded to someone in the shadows. A shot rang out. Porter jerked, slumped forward in his saddle, blood spreading across his chest. Eliza screamed. Caleb drew his gun, but Moss was faster, had his pistol aimed at Eliza. "Drop it, Thorne, or the girl dies." Caleb froze, looked at Eliza, at me, at the rifles in the windows. He dropped the gun. "Good choice," Moss said. "Now dismount. Slowly. Hands where I can see them." We dismounted. Hands up. Surrounded. More deputies appeared. 4 of them. They took our weapons, bound our hands. Professional. Efficient. They'd done this before. "What about Porter?" I asked, looking at the dead man still slumped on his horse. "What about him?" Moss said. "Man was fleeing arrest. Got shot trying to escape. Clean. There'll be witnesses. People saw what a known criminal get shot by lawmen doing their duty." Moss gestured at the gathering crowd. "Anyone here want to contradict that story?" The crowd was silent. 50 people watching, none speaking. That's how it works. When power shows its teeth, people remember how to look away. "Move," Moss said, pushing Caleb toward the courthouse. "Judge is waiting. I thought you said Price was unavailable." "Price is, but there's another judge in town, special appointment, here just for this case." My stomach dropped. "Who?" Moss smiled. "You'll see." They took us through the courthouse to a hearing room in back. Small, windowless, just a desk, some chairs, and a man in a black robe sitting behind that desk. The man was 60. Gray hair, cold eyes, face like carved ice. I didn't recognize him, but Caleb did. "Judge Warwick," Caleb said, his voice flat. "Dead." "Mr. Thorne," Warwick replied. "It's been a long time." "Not long enough," Warwick smiled. "I hear you've been causing problems, interfering with legitimate business, making accusations against respectable men." "I've been trying to stop human trafficking." "That's a serious charge. You have evidence." "The woman, Eliza Ferris. She's property in dispute, not a witness. Try again." "The ledger from Benson's freight yard. It shows you placed an order and failed to accept delivery. That's breach of contract, Mr. Thorne, not trafficking." Caleb's hands were shaking, not from fear, from rage. "You're one of Crow's," he said. "I'm an appointed territorial judge, and you're a defendant in a fraud case. Those are the only facts that matter." Warwick looked at me. "Dr. Hayes, I'm surprised to see you here, man of your reputation, getting involved in criminal enterprise." "I'm involved in stopping a criminal enterprise." "By harboring stolen property, by helping a known associate of Mr. Crow's violate his contractual obligations. Caleb doesn't work for Crow anymore. He hasn't for 10 years. And yet here he is, stealing Crow's property, destroying company records. Sounds like a man who never really left." The trap was perfect. Every truth we had Warwick twisted into evidence against us. Every fact became fiction in his hands. "What do you want?" Caleb asked. "I want justice, but Mr. Crow is a reasonable man. He's willing to accept restitution." "What kind of restitution?" Warwick looked at Eliza. "Return the property, pay damages for the destroyed records and the burned ranch, sign an affidavit that Mr. Crow acted within his legal rights. Do that, and the criminal charges disappear. And if we refuse, then you go to territorial prison. 2 years for you, 1 for Dr. Hayes, and the girl reverts to Crow as collateral for the unpaid debt." Eliza was shaking, silent tears running down her face. I wanted to comfort her, but my hands were bound and there were guards at every door. "We have evidence," I said. "We have Porter's testimony. We have—" "Porter is dead," Warwick interrupted. "Shot while fleeing arrest. And even if he weren't, the testimony of a known criminal wouldn't outweigh established legal contracts. Then we'll testify ourselves. Your testimony is compromised. Your defendants. You have motive to lie." Every avenue blocked. Every door closed. Caleb looked at Eliza. "I'm sorry. I thought we could beat him. I was wrong." "Don't," Eliza said. Her voice was hoarse, broken. "Don't apologize for trying." Warwick shuffled papers. "I'll give you 10 minutes to decide. Accept Crow's terms or face trial. Your choice." He stood, walked out, left us with 2 guards and our despair. The door closed. We sat in silence. Then Eliza spoke. "I won't go back." "Eliza." "I won't. I'll die first. I mean it." She looked at me, at Caleb. Her eyes were clear, final. "I'd rather be dead than be property again." Caleb closed his eyes. "There has to be another way." "There isn't. You heard Warwick. Crow owns the law here, owns the judge, probably owns half the town." "Not half," a voice said from the corner. We all turned. Judge Horace Price stepped out of the shadows. He'd been there the whole time, listening. "Judge," I said, "thank God. Can you—" "I can't overturn Warwick's authority. He's been appointed by the territorial governor. His jurisdiction supersedes mine." "Then we're finished." "In this room, yes, but courtrooms aren't the only place where justice happens." He looked at the guards, both young, local boys who'd probably taken the badge for steady pay. "You too. You know me." "Yes, sir, Judge Price." "You know my reputation." "Yes, sir. Fair, honest." "Then I want you to ask yourselves something. Is what's happening in this room justice, or is it power dressed up in legal clothes?" The guards shifted, uncomfortable. Price continued. "That girl, look at her. Really look. You see property or a person?" One guard looked at Eliza, at her bandaged wrists, her tear-streaked face, her eyes that held too much fear for someone so young. "I see a person," he said quietly. "Then act like it." The guard looked at his partner. Some silent communication passed between them. Then they both stepped aside. "Doors open," the first guard said. "We didn't see nothing." Price nodded. "Good men. Go on now. Get yourselves clear of this." They left. We were alone, unguarded, with a judge who'd just committed career suicide to give us a chance. "You just destroyed yourself," Caleb said. "Probably," Price agreed. "But I'm 70 years old. I've had my career. That girl's got her whole life ahead of her, if she lives to see it." "Where do we go?" I asked. "The courthouse steps. Right now, before Warwick realizes you're gone." "What good will that do?" Price smiled. Thin, dangerous. "Deputy Moss made one mistake. He arrested you in public, with witnesses. And while some people look away from power, others just need someone to look toward first." He pulled off his judicial robe. Underneath he wore a simple vest and shirt. A man, not an office. "Come on," he said. "Let's go give them something to look at." We walked out of the courthouse together. Price in front, us behind. Looking like prisoners, but walking like free people. The crowd was still there. Bigger now. Word had spread. Arrests, shooting, drama in Tucson. Deputy Moss saw us coming. His face went from satisfied to confused to angry in 3 seconds. "Price, what are you doing?" "Providing counsel." "They're under arrest. On charges based on fraudulent evidence. I'm filing a motion to dismiss." "You can't." "I can, and I am, right here, right now, in front of everyone." Price turned to the crowd, raised his voice. "People of Tucson, I'm Judge Horace Price. Some of you know me, some don't. But what you need to know now is this. The law has been corrupted, justice has been bought, and if we don't speak up, good people will suffer for it." Moss put his hand on his gun. "Price, you're out of line." "No, I'm finally in line, with what I swore to uphold." He gestured to Caleb, to me, to Eliza. These people came to Tucson seeking justice. Instead, they found a system rigged against them, a judge in Crow's pocket, deputies who kill prisoners rather than let them testify, and a town willing to look the other way as long as the corruption doesn't touch them directly. The crowd was murmuring, some nodding, some uncomfortable. Price pointed at Eliza. "Look at this young woman. Look at her wrists. Those are rope burns from being tied like cargo. She was trafficked, sold, delivered to a ranch like a piece of furniture." "That's not true," Moss protested. "She's part of a freight dispute, a contractual matter." "Then let her speak," Price said. "Let her tell her story. If it's just a contract dispute, what harm can her words do?" Moss hesitated, calculating. If he stopped her from speaking, he'd prove Price's point. If he let her speak and she was convincing, he'd lose control of the narrative. He was trapped by the same trick he'd used on us, the power of public witness. "Fine," Moss said. "Let her speak. Won't change anything." Price turned to Eliza, gentle, kind. "Miss Ferris, would you like to tell these people what happened to you?" Eliza looked at the crowd. 50 people, maybe more, all staring, waiting. She'd spent weeks being invisible, being nothing, being property. Now everyone was looking at her, seeing her, waiting for her voice. She was terrified. I could see it in her face, the urge to run, to hide, to disappear again. But she didn't run. She stepped forward. When Eliza spoke, her voice was quiet at first. People leaned in to hear. "My name is Eliza Ferris." Simple words, but they mattered. They were a claim, an assertion. I am a person with a name. I'm from Kansas. My father was a farmer. We had a small place, 70 acres. It wasn't much, but it was ours. Her voice grew stronger. 3 months ago, my father got into debt. Bad loans, high interest, the kind that compound until you can't breathe. Men came to collect. She paused, swallowed hard. They said my father could pay with me, 23 years old, healthy, could work, could other things. Said I was worth $200 against his debt. A woman in the crowd made a sound. Shock or sympathy or both. Eliza continued. I tried to run. They caught me, tied my wrists, put me in a wagon with 4 other women, all of us taken from our families, all of us sold. She held up her bandaged wrists. Let people see. These are from the ropes, from days of being tied, from pulling against restraints until my skin tore, from being transported like cargo across 3 territories. Deputy Moss tried to interrupt. This is all very emotional, but... Let her finish, someone in the crowd said. A man's voice, firm. Moss looked surprised, but he stayed quiet. Eliza's eyes found mine, drew strength, continued. They drugged me with laudanum, kept me quiet, compliant. I lost days, weeks maybe, just fragments of consciousness, being moved, being handled, being inventory. Her voice cracked, but she didn't stop. I woke up in a wagon, under a white blanket, at a ranch outside Tombstone. There was a note. Paid, delivered. Like I was grain, or tools, or anything except human. The man who found me, Caleb Thorne, he could have done anything. He had paperwork saying I was his, had been paid for. But instead he cut the ropes. He brought me to Dr. Hayes, and he asked what I wanted. She looked at Caleb. That was the first time in a month anyone had asked me what I wanted. The crowd was silent. You could hear wind, horses, the distant sound of a church bell. I married him, not because I love him, not because I had to, but because it was the only way to stop being property, the only way to have a legal name that meant something. She turned to Moss, to Warwick, who'd come out to watch, to the crowd. You want to call that fraud, fine. But fraud is pretending a human being is cargo. Fraud is using legal words to dress up slavery. Fraud is what Silas Crow does every day while men like Deputy Moss look the other way. Moss's face was red. You're making serious accusations. I'm telling the truth, and if that's serious, maybe the problem isn't me. She looked out at the crowd again, at all those faces watching, judging, deciding. I'm not asking you to believe me because I'm honest. I'm asking you to believe me because deep down you already know. You know women disappear in this territory. You know girls go missing. You know there's a trade in people that everyone pretends not to see. Her voice rose, stronger now. I'm asking you to see it now, to look at me and admit what I am. Not property, not evidence, not a contract dispute. She took a breath. Final. Definitive. I am Eliza Ferris. I am 23 years old. I am a person, and I refuse to be anything less. The silence that followed was absolute. Then someone started clapping. One person, in the back of the crowd, then another, then more. Not everyone, maybe not even most, but enough. Enough to show that the truth had landed. That witness had power. That silence could break. Moss drew his gun, not aimed at Eliza, at Caleb. Enough, theater, you're all under arrest. Anyone who interferes will join them. But the crowd didn't back away. If anything, they pressed closer. An old man stepped forward, gray beard, weathered face, a miner or rancher, someone who'd lived hard years. I knew a girl once, he said. 20 years back. She disappeared, just gone one day. We all assumed she ran off or died in the desert, but we didn't look too hard, didn't ask questions. He looked at Eliza. Maybe if we had, she'd have gotten to grow old, like I did. A woman spoke up, Mexican accent, worn hands, a laundress probably. My niece, 5 years ago, came from Sonora to work, never heard from again. The law said she just moved on, but her mother knew better. Mothers always know. More voices, more stories. The missing, the disappeared, the women who became ghosts because no one asked questions. The crowd wasn't just watching anymore. They were testifying, building a collective witness that Moss couldn't shoot, couldn't silence. Deputy Moss looked around, realized he was losing control. These are just stories, he said. Not evidence. Not, I have evidence. The voice came from behind us, familiar, authoritative. We turned. Dr. Samuel Hayes. No, wait. That was me. I'm telling this story wrong. Let me correct. I stepped forward, pulled papers from my medical bag. I have Sarah Thorne's medical records, including documentation of a morphine shipment that was diverted, sold to Crow's mining operation instead of delivered to a dying woman. I held up the papers. That's manslaughter at minimum, possibly murder if you can prove intent. Warwick moved toward me. Those records are privileged. Not when they document a crime, and not when the patient is deceased. I looked at Caleb. Time for the truth. All of it. 5 years ago I failed to save your wife, not because I wasn't skilled enough, but because the medicine she needed was stolen, diverted, sold for profit while she died in pain. Caleb's face went white. He'd suspected, but hearing it confirmed was different. Who? He asked, voice barely a whisper. I looked past Moss, past Warwick, to the man standing in the shadows at the edge of the square. Silas Crow. He'd been there all along, watching, waiting to see how his investment played out. Ask him, I said. Crow stepped into the light. He was calm, composed, a businessman dealing with an unfortunate situation. "Dr. Hayes," he said pleasantly, "that's quite an accusation. I hope you have proof." "I have shipping records showing morphine ordered for Sarah Thorne, diverted to the Silver Star mine, your mine." "Mistakes happen. Clerical errors. Hardly murder." "It's murder when you know someone will die without it. When you profit from that death. When you send flowers to the funeral with your signature mark." I pulled out the white blanket, the one Eliza had been wrapped in, showed the symbol. "This mark, the same one on the flowers at Sarah's grave, the same one on shipping manifests from your company. It's your signature, Crow, your calling card." Crow smiled. "It's a shipping mark. Hundreds of companies use similar symbols. Not identical ones, not with the exact same design." I checked. The crowd was watching, processing, connecting dots. Caleb walked toward Crow, slow, deliberate, every step measured. "You killed my wife." "I filled a contract. If your wife died, that's unfortunate, but it's not my responsibility. You took medicine meant for her, sold it, profited while she suffered. I ran a business, still do, legal, legitimate. You traffic people. I move freight." They stood face to face, 10 feet apart, two men with 10 years of history between them. "You sent Eliza to my ranch on purpose," Caleb said, "to punish me for leaving, to drag me back into your world. I filled an order placed in your name, an order I never made. Paperwork says otherwise. Paperwork you forged." Crow shrugged. "Prove it." And there it was, the core of his power, not violence, not even corruption, just the simple fact that proving the truth was harder than maintaining a lie. "I can't prove it," Caleb admitted. "Not in a way that a court would accept, not with judges you own and deputies on your payroll." "Then I'd say this conversation is over." Crow turned to walk away. That's when Caleb spoke again, loud enough for everyone to hear. "You're right. I can't prove it legally, but I can prove it morally, to everyone here, to this town, to the territory." He looked at the crowd. 10 years ago I worked for this man. I helped build his shipping empire. I created systems to move freight without scrutiny, to hide cargo, to make paperwork disappear." Murmurs from the crowd. Surprise. Judgment. I knew what we were doing was wrong. I knew we were moving people, treating them like property, but I told myself it wasn't my problem, that I was just doing logistics. His voice cracked. "I was wrong. I was complicit, and Sarah made me see that." He pulled out a folded paper from his coat, old, worn, like he'd carried it for years. "This is a letter Sarah wrote me. 2 days before she died. She knew she wasn't going to make it, and she wanted to make sure I understood something." He read aloud, his voice shaking but clear. "Caleb, I'm dying. We both know it. But I'm not afraid of death. I'm afraid you'll use my death as an excuse to stop fighting, to retreat, to become a man who looks away when people suffer." The square was silent, everyone listening. "Promise me something. Promise you won't let grief turn you into stone. Promise you'll keep asking questions, keep standing up, keep choosing to see people, not as problems to avoid." He folded the letter. "I broke that promise for 5 years. I became exactly what she feared, a man who looked away." He looked at Eliza. "Until I couldn't anymore." Then back to Crow. "You thought sending her to my ranch would destroy me, would prove I'm still the coward who takes the easy way. But you were wrong. She saved me, reminded me what it means to be human." Crow was unmoved. "This is very touching, but it doesn't change the facts. The law is on my side. The paperwork is clear. And unless you have actual evidence, not stories, not emotions, not old letters, this ends with you in prison. Maybe, Caleb said. "But it ends with everyone knowing what you are. Not a businessman, a predator. And predators only survive when people pretend not to see them." He turned to the crowd. "I'm asking you to see, to witness, to remember. Even if the law fails today, even if Crow walks away, remember what you heard, remember Eliza's story. Remember all the missing women. And next time someone disappears, ask questions. Demand answers. Don't let men like Crow hide behind paperwork and corruption." It was a simple ask, but powerful. Because witness has weight. Memory has power. Truth spoken aloud becomes harder to bury. Warwick stepped forward. "This has gone on long enough. Deputy Moss, arrest these people. All of them." Moss moved forward, but the crowd didn't part. They didn't actively resist, didn't form a wall, just didn't move, didn't make way. Passive resistance, the kind that's hard to fight because it's hard to name. "Move," Moss ordered. Nobody did. "I said move." The old miner spoke. "We're just standing here, Deputy. That against the law now. You're obstructing justice. We're witnessing it. They're a difference." Moss drew his gun. "I will shoot if you don't." "No, you won't." The voice was female, strong. A woman pushed through the crowd. "Martha Chen, you shoot an unarmed citizen in the town square, you're a murderer, not a lawman." And we all saw it. More people pressing in, not threatening, just present, being witnesses, making it impossible for violence to happen quietly. Crow watched all this with cold calculation, understanding that the situation had changed, that public opinion was shifting. He couldn't win through force, not here, not now, not with this many witnesses, but he could retreat, regroup, fight another day. "Judge Warwick," he said calmly, "I believe we've proven our point. The defendants are clearly guilty, but I'm willing to show mercy." "What kind of mercy?" Warwick asked. "Drop the charges. Let them go. All I want is the return of my property." He looked at Eliza. "Come with me now, voluntarily, and everyone else walks free." Eliza's face went pale, but her voice was steady. "No. It's the only way to end this. You know that." "Then it doesn't end, because I'm not going with you. You're choosing prison for all of them, for yourself. I'm choosing to be a person, whatever the cost." Crow studied her, then Caleb, then the crowd. "You've made your choice," he said. "So have I." He turned to Warwick. "File the charges, maximum penalties, and add incitement to riot for Mr. Thorne's speech." "Wait." The voice came from the courthouse door. A man stepped out. 50s, badge on his chest. Not a deputy's badge, a marshal's badge, federal. "Marshal Clayton," he said. "Heard there was some trouble in Tucson. Decided to cut my circuit short." He looked at Crow, at Warwick, at the scene in the square. "Someone want to explain what's happening here?" Marshal Clayton listened to everyone. Crow's version, our version, testimonies from the crowd, Warwick's legal justifications, Price's objections. He took notes, asked questions, looked at evidence, the shipping records, Sarah's medical files, Eliza's rope burns, the marriage certificate, the forged ledger entry. He took it all in, methodical, thorough, a man who'd seen enough corruption to recognize it on sight. Finally he spoke. "Here's what I see. A woman who was trafficked. A legal marriage performed by a recognized judge. Evidence of document forgery. And a whole lot of people on someone's payroll trying to call it justice." "Marshal," Crow protested, "these are serious accusations." "They are, which is why I'm arresting you pending investigation." "On what charge?" "Human trafficking, document forgery, bribery of public officials." "Should I continue?" "You have no jurisdiction over territorial matters." "I do when they involve interstate commerce, which human trafficking does, and when local law enforcement is compromised, which it clearly is." He looked at Moss. "Deputy, your badge, now." Moss's face went red. You can't. I can. And I am. You're suspended pending investigation into the death of Jack Porter and possible involvement in trafficking operations. Moss looked at Crow, waiting for help. Crow said nothing, just watched, already calculating his legal defense. Moss unbadged himself, set it on the courthouse steps, walked away. A man suddenly powerless. Clayton turned to Warwick. Judge, I suggest you recuse yourself from this case, unless you want me investigating your appointment. Warwick's face was stone, but he nodded. I'll file the paperwork. You do that. Clayton looked at us, at Caleb, Eliza, me. You three. You're free to go, but stay in Tucson. I'll need official statements. What about Crow? Caleb asked. He'll get a trial. Fair one. In federal court, with a jury that doesn't know him. And if he's acquitted? Clayton smiled, thin, hard. Then at least everyone knows what he is. Sometimes that's justice enough. He walked toward Crow, pulled out handcuffs. Crow didn't resist, didn't rage, just submitted with cold dignity. This won't stick, he said quietly. I have lawyers, resources, connections. Probably, Clayton agreed. But your business is done in this territory. Word's out, people are watching, and predators can't hunt when everyone's looking. He led Crow away. The crowd dispersed, slowly, reluctantly, like they didn't quite trust that it was over. We stood on the courthouse steps. Caleb, Eliza, me, Judge Price, alive, free, victorious. It didn't feel like victory. It felt like survival. What now? Eliza asked. None of us had an answer. Tucson settled back into normal rhythms surprisingly fast. Crow was in custody pending trial. Moss was under investigation. Warwick had resigned and left the territory. The stories spread. About the girl who'd been trafficked. About the rancher who'd fought back. About the town that had finally witnessed. Some versions were accurate, most weren't. But they all carried the core truth. That power had been challenged. That silence had broken. Eliza gave her official statement to Marshal Clayton. 3 hours of testimony. Every detail she could remember. Names, places, faces. Other women came forward. Slowly, carefully, with their own stories of disappearance and sale and survival. It wouldn't bring back the ones who didn't survive, but it meant the ones who did weren't invisible anymore. I spent the week writing reports, medical documentation of Eliza's injuries, statements about Sarah's death, everything Clayton needed to build his case. Caleb spent the week quiet, processing. He'd gotten justice for Sarah. Maybe not full justice, but enough to know that her death mattered, that someone would answer for it. One evening I found him at Sarah's grave. He'd ridden back to the ruins of his ranch, to the cottonwood where she was buried. The grave was untouched. The fire had stopped before reaching it, like even destruction knew to respect the dead. "How you holding up?" I asked. He didn't answer for a long time, just stared at the headstone. "I thought I'd feel different," he said finally, knowing the truth, knowing Crow would face trial, but I just feel tired. That's normal. Grief is exhausting. Is it grief or just the weight of carrying it finally catching up? Both, probably. He touched the headstone, traced Sarah's name. I kept her promise, finally, after 5 years of failing. You didn't fail. You just needed time. Time Sarah didn't have. No, she didn't. But she'd be proud of what you did for Eliza. Would she? Or would she say I should have done it sooner for the others, for all the women I let Crow traffic when I worked for him? I didn't have an answer, because he was right. Some debts can't be repaid. Some guilt doesn't wash away. "What are you going to do now?" I asked. "Don't know. The ranch is gone. My life here is ashes. Literally. You could rebuild. Maybe. Or maybe it's time to start somewhere new. Somewhere without ghosts. Eliza would go with you, if you asked. He looked at me sharply. Why would she do that? Because you're the first person in a long time who treated her like a person. Because she trusts you. Because marriage or not, you're connected now. That's not fair to her. She should be free. To choose her own path, not tied to mine out of gratitude. Then ask her what she wants. Don't decide for her. He nodded slowly. You're right. I'll ask. We stood there in silence. Two men at a grave, paying respects to someone who'd changed both our lives. Doc, yes. Thank you for telling me the truth about the morphine, even though it was 5 years late. I should have told you sooner. Yes, but you told me eventually. That counts for something. We rode back to Tucson together, not saying much, just existing alongside each other in that comfortable quiet that comes after crisis. Caleb found Eliza in the boarding house where she'd been staying. Small room, clean, safe. Martha Chen had paid for it, said she didn't need thanks, just wanted to help. Eliza was sitting by the window, reading, or trying to. Her hands kept shaking, making the pages blur. Caleb knocked, waited for permission. Come in, she said. He entered, hat in hands, looking uncertain in a way that didn't fit him. We need to talk, he said. Eliza set down her book. That sounds ominous. It's not. Or maybe it is. I don't know. He sat across from her, not too close, still giving her space. The trial will take months, he said. Maybe longer. Clayton wants you to stay, to testify. I know, he told me. After that, you're free. The marriage, it was just for protection. If you want it annulled, I'll sign whatever papers you need. Eliza looked at him, really looked. Do you want it annulled? I want you to have choices, real ones, not choices forced by circumstances. That's not an answer. Caleb took a breath. No, I don't want it annulled. But that's selfish. You deserve better than a marriage of convenience to a man twice your age with a burned-out ranch and a past he's ashamed of. You're not twice my age. You're 48. I'm 23. That's barely 25 years. Still what? Still not perfect. Still complicated. Caleb, nothing about my life has been perfect. Or simple. I'm not looking for that. What are you looking for? She thought about it. Someone who sees me, who doesn't look away, who treats me like I matter. You deserve that. You deserve everything. Maybe. But what I want is someone who doesn't pretend to have all the answers, who admits when they're wrong, who keeps trying even when it's hard. She leaned forward. You gave me my life back. Not because you had to, because you chose to. That means something. It means I did one decent thing after years of doing nothing. It means you're capable of decent things, and that's enough for me, right now. Caleb's voice was quiet, almost afraid. What does that mean, right now? It means I'm not asking for forever. I'm asking for today, tomorrow, the day after. We figure it out as we go. You really want to stay married to me? I want to stay connected to someone who proved kindness exists. Whether that's as your wife or your friend or something else, we can figure that out. She smiled. Small but real. Unless you're trying to get rid of me. No. God, no. I wanted you to know you have options. I know. And I'm choosing this. For now. Is that okay? Caleb nodded. Yes. It's more than okay. They sat in silence, the kind that feels like agreement instead of emptiness. Caleb. Yes. When the trial's over, when all this is done, what will you do? I don't know. The ranch is gone. Can't really go back to Tombstone. Too many memories. Where would you go if you could go anywhere? He thought about it. Maybe north, California or Oregon, somewhere with water, trees, somewhere that doesn't remind me of dust and death. Could I come with you? You'd want to. I have nothing tying me here, or anywhere else. My father sold me. My home is gone. You're the closest thing I have to family. That's a terrible reason to stay with someone. Maybe. But it's honest. And I'm tired of pretending. Caleb reached out, slowly, giving her time to pull away. When she didn't, he took her hand, careful of the healing wrists. Then we'll go together. When this is over, we'll find somewhere new. Start fresh. No ghosts. Well, maybe some ghosts, but quiet ones, the kind we can live with. Eliza squeezed his hand. I can live with that. The trial took 6 weeks. Evidence, testimony, lawyers arguing over definitions and jurisdiction and what constitutes proof. Eliza testified. So did I. So did Caleb. So did a dozen other women who'd survived Crow's operation. The jury deliberated for 2 days. Found Crow guilty on 7 counts of human trafficking, 3 counts of document forgery, 1 count of manslaughter in Sarah Thorne's death, 30 years in territorial prison. He'd die there, an old man in a cell. It wasn't enough. Not really. Not for all the lives he'd destroyed. But it was something. Deputy Moss turned state's evidence, testified against Crow in exchange for a lighter sentence, 10 years instead of 20. He'd get out eventually, live somewhere else, be someone else, but everyone would know, and sometimes reputation is a life sentence too. After the verdict, we stood on the courthouse steps. Caleb, Eliza, me, Marshal Clayton. You did good work, Clayton said. All of you. Will it last? I asked. Or will someone else just take Crow's place? Probably. But now people know what to look for, how to recognize the signs, how to speak up. He tipped his hat. That's all we can do. Plant seeds. Hope they grow. He walked away, on to the next circuit, the next case, the next fight. We watched him go. What now? Eliza asked. The same question, but different circumstances. Now, Caleb said, we go north, like we talked about. When? Tomorrow, if you're ready. She looked at the courthouse, at Tucson, at the place where her old life ended and something new began. I'm ready, she said. We left the next morning, 3 people on horses, heading north toward California, toward green, water, trees, somewhere that felt like beginning instead of ending. I rode with them for 2 days, then split off, back to Tombstone, to my practice, to my life. But I wrote to them. They wrote back. Occasional letters tracking their journey. They settled in Northern California, small town, lumber industry, quiet. Caleb bought land, built a house, taught logging safety. Eliza started a school, for girls mostly, taught them reading, writing, how to recognize danger, how to speak up. They lived together, sometimes as husband and wife, sometimes as companions, sometimes as friends who shared a house and a history. The marriage stayed legal, but its meaning evolved, became whatever they needed it to be. It wasn't a fairy tale, wasn't a romance novel, just 2 people choosing each other, day by day, year by year. Eliza lived to 81, Caleb to 73. They had no children, but they raised dozens through that school, gave them tools to survive, to fight, to be more than what the world tried to make them. When Caleb died, Eliza wrote me, said he'd gone peacefully, in sleep, like Sarah, said she'd buried him under a tree, pine this time, not cottonwood, said she talked to him sometimes, and to Sarah, thanked them both for seeing her as a person when the world saw property. She lived another 8 years, ran the school until she was too old to teach, then sat on the porch and told stories to whoever would listen. Stories about a time when the frontier was wild and law was negotiable and women disappeared. But also stories about people who stood up, Who witnessed? Who chose to see? When she died, they buried her next to Caleb, under that pine tree, far from Kansas, far from Arizona, far from where she'd been cargo, in a place she'd chosen, with people she'd chosen, living a life she'd claimed for herself. I finished the story. The sun had set completely. Tucson was dark, except for scattered lamps. Clara was quiet, processing. Finally she spoke. Did they love each other, Caleb and Eliza? I thought about how to answer. I think they loved what they gave each other. Safety, witness, choice. Whether that's the same as romantic love, I don't know. But it was real, and it mattered. And you, did you ever forgive yourself for not saving Sarah? No, but I learned to carry it, to let it shape me instead of breaking me. That's why you told me this story, to teach me something. Maybe, or maybe just to remember. Sometimes testimony is its own purpose. Clara looked at her hands, young, unmarked. What if I face something like that someday? Something where the law is wrong and doing the right thing costs everything. Then you'll have to choose, like they did, like I did. But you'll know it's possible, that people have stood up before, that witness has power. That's not very reassuring. No, but it's honest. We sat in silence, the desert night settling around us. Papa, yes, thank you for telling me. You're welcome. She stood, kissed my forehead, went inside to bed. I stayed on the porch, looking at stars, thinking about Caleb and Eliza and Sarah, about choices made and lives changed and the weight of witness. My hand touched the scar, that thin white line, 20 years old, but it might as well have been yesterday. Some things you carry forever, not because you want to, because they shaped you, became part of who you are. I carried Sarah's death, Caleb's grief, Eliza's survival, all of it woven into who I'd become. Not a burden exactly, more like ballast, weight that kept me grounded, reminded me what mattered. Inside, I heard Clara moving around, getting ready for bed, living her young life with its certainties and dreams. Someday she'd face her own choice, her own moment of standing or looking away. I couldn't protect her from that. Nobody could. But I could give her this story, this testimony, this proof that ordinary people could do extraordinary things when they chose to see. The moon rose, full and bright, painting the desert silver. I thought about Eliza, probably sitting on her own porch in California, looking at the same moon, telling her own stories to the next generation, witness passing to witness, memory becoming history, truth staying alive through telling. That was enough. It had to be. I stood, stretched, felt my old bones protest. 73 years on this earth. Most of them spent trying to heal what I could and accept what I couldn't. One scar, one story, one summer when everything changed. I went inside, closed the door, left the desert to its darkness. But the story stayed, living, breathing, passing from my voice to Clara's ears to whoever she'd tell someday. That's how truth survives. Not through law, not through power, through witness, through people choosing to remember, to speak, to testify. I am Eliza Ferris. I am a person. Simple words. But they echo still, in every courtroom where someone speaks up, in every moment when someone chooses to see instead of looking away, in every act of witness that says, you matter. You are more than what they tried to make you. The white blanket is gone, burned probably, or buried, but the story remains, and as long as someone tells it, the truth stays alive.